Hey guys, tonight we walk in slowly, like we've got all the time in the world because we do. Picture the Giza Plateau after the last tour buses have rolled away, after the vendors have packed up, after the heat has stopped acting like it owns the place. The air is cool enough to loosen your shoulders. The smell is dry and mineral. That faint desert scent your brain labels as ancient, even if it can't explain why. Far off, Cairo glows low on the horizon, a soft amber haze. But up here the darkness feels wide and clean, as if the desert is giving the night extra room. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And if you're still awake enough to type, post your location and your local time in the comments. I love seeing how many different nights are happening at once while we share the same calm story. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. Your eyes adjust, and the pyramids show themselves the way mountains do at night. Not with bright detail, but with confident outline. 3 silhouettes, each with its own quiet personality. The Great Pyramid of Khufu looks broad and steady, like a presence that doesn't need to prove anything. Khafre's pyramid stands nearby, slightly smaller, sitting on a bit higher ground so it can play that famous visual trick and look almost equal from certain angles. Menkaur's pyramid is smaller still, dignified in its distance, like it's perfectly fine letting the other two take the spotlight while it keeps its composure. You've seen these shapes in photos 1,000 times, and still, the real sight does something different to you. A pyramid is a simple form, 4 sides rising to a point. Yet your nervous system responds like it's meeting something important. The mind likes clean geometry when it's tired. Straight lines, stable angles, a shape that doesn't wobble. The pyramids give your attention something orderly to lean on, and the rest of your thoughts stop jostling for the front row. Walking closer, the scale shifts from big to almost unreasonable. In the dark, your brain tries to compare it to familiar things, buildings, hills, stadiums, and none of them fit cleanly. The Great Pyramid was built in Egypt's Old Kingdom during the 4th dynasty, roughly 4,500 years ago. That number can sound like trivia in daylight, but at night it lands as a quiet shock. 4,500 years means it was already old before countless later kingdoms had even learned their own rhythms. It means this structure has watched human history come and go like weather. The stone in front of you looks less like an object and more like a decision that never got reversed. The blocks at the base aren't just a wall. They're individual presences, each with its own texture, each edge softened by time and wind. In daylight, people rush around trying to capture the perfect angle, treating stone like a prop. Up here at night, the performance drops away. The stones don't need an audience. They've spent most of their existence without attention, and they look perfectly comfortable with that. A breeze slides across the plateau, more audible than forceful, as if the desert is choosing to whisper instead of shout. Daytime here can feel like a negotiation with heat. Nighttime is the opposite. The temperature falls just enough to make everything kinder. The sand stops burning. The air stops pressing. Your skin doesn't feel attacked by sunlight. It's amazing how quickly your body forgives the world when the world stops pushing. Your pace naturally slows, not because you're trying to be poetic, but because the place invites it. Each step feels deliberate. The Great Pyramid grows in your field of view until the slope of its sides becomes a physical idea, not just a picture. The surfaces lean inward with steady confidence, rising toward a point the darkness keeps half hidden. The edges catch faint moonlight, and that's enough to trace the geometry. There's a quiet satisfaction in noticing that this monument was designed to be seen from far away. It wasn't meant to be discovered by accident. It was meant to stand on a horizon and refuse to be ignored. Even at night, when details soften, the shape still declares itself. The pyramid doesn't have to be loud. It simply remains larger than everything around it. One of the most calming facts about the Great Pyramid is also one of the most stubbornly impressive. Its sides align extremely closely with the cardinal directions: north, south, east, and west. People debate the method, but the result tells you what matters. The builders paid attention. They watched the sky. They tracked shadows. They repeated measurements until the lines behaved. That kind of patient precision is relaxing to think about, like watching someone carefully draw a straight line and refusing to accept anything slightly off. Look up for a moment. Even with modern lights in the distance, the desert still offers a larger kind of darkness, and the stars feel sharper because there's more space for them. In the Old Kingdom, the sky wasn't decoration. It was a clock, a compass, a map, a set of stories people used to organize time. Standing here, you can imagine ancient observers doing what you're doing, watching the sky, letting it feel vast without feeling threatening. The pyramids sit beneath that sky like listeners, as if stone itself is paying attention. Bring your attention back down to the base and the blocks. Not every block is identical. Some seams are tighter than others. Some surfaces look smoother, some rougher, and those differences are oddly comforting. They're proof of hands, tools, choices, and corrections. The pyramids feel eternal, but they were made by humans, and the human presence still lingers in the tiny imperfections that moonlight can't quite hide. Perfection was never the point. Endurance was. Gravity is the quiet hero of the whole scene. It's what makes the pyramids feel stable, even when your mind starts listing all the ways other structures fail. A pyramid doesn't fight gravity the way a thin tower does. It collaborates. The weight funnels downward and outward, spreading its force into the ground. That's why the silhouette feels like permanence. It's not a supernatural secret. It's a design that treats physics like a partner instead of an enemy. There's a little gentle humor in that, too. People love dramatic explanations. Lost civilizations, secret machines, visitors from the sky, and you can enjoy those stories without letting them steal the real marvel. The real marvel is that ordinary humans took a shape that is basically the strongest way to stack heavy material, then pushed it to a scale that still controls the horizon. Sometimes the most enduring genius looks obvious after it's done, and that's the funny part. The solution can look simple, while the effort behind it is anything but. And still, obvious doesn't mean easy. Your mind may wander toward the famous question, how the stones were moved, how the work was organized, how the measurements stayed consistent. That curiosity is welcome here, but it doesn't have to become restless. The pyramids don't demand immediate answers. They have never been in a hurry, and they won't suddenly start tonight. Shift your gaze toward Khafre's pyramid. In certain light, it can seem to wear a faint cap near the top, a subtle change in tone that makes it feel slightly different from its neighbor. Even in the dark, placement tells a story about choices, where to build, how to present the monument to the world, how to claim a spot on this plateau without being swallowed by the bigger silhouette nearby. These weren't mass-produced objects. They were statements, each arranged to hold its own space in your sightline. Nearby, lower in the landscape, the Sphinx is less of a face at night and more of a presence. In daylight, it's easy to turn it into a photo opportunity. In moonlight, it becomes what it really is, a long, patient guardian shape pressed into the edge of the plateau. It has watched sandstorms, sunrise, armies, and quiet ordinary nights when nothing happened at all. The thought that it has seen countless nights like this is unexpectedly comforting. It means your moment here doesn't have to be dramatic to be real. It can be small, quiet, personal, and still belong in a place this large. You keep moving, and the plateau begins to feel separate from the world of schedules and notifications. The ground under your feet isn't soft dune sand everywhere. It's firm in places, rock close to the surface. That firmness changes the way you stand. You feel steadier, literally. The builders chose this plateau for reasons that make sense even before you learn the details. They didn't pick a flimsy stage for their heaviest performance. They picked a foundation that could take the weight and remain calm. And that calm spreads into you. Your breathing slows without instruction. Your shoulders drop another notch. Your jaw unclenches like it's finally getting permission. Standing near something that has outlasted almost everything does a gentle thing to your sense of urgency. Your problems don't vanish, but they stop shouting. They become smaller voices, background noise, the kind you can ignore without guilt. Moonlight washes the plateau in thin layers, turning sand pale and stone darker, as if the world has been simplified into a few quiet tones. The pyramids don't sparkle, they absorb. They don't compete for attention. They simply remain in your line of sight, steady and quiet, giving you a kind of borrowed patience. And the closer you get to the place where stone rises from earth, the more the land itself starts to feel like part of the monument, solid, deliberate, chosen, waiting beneath everything that was built above it. That feeling you had, land behaving like part of the monument, gets stronger the longer you stand there, because the pyramids aren't sitting on the desert the way a souvenir sits on a shelf. They're anchored into a specific edge of the world, the place where green river life gives up and dry stone begins. Your feet can sense it even in the dark. A few steps in one direction, and the ground starts to loosen into sand that shifts in size. A few steps back, and it firms up again, gritty and dependable, the plateau offering a surface that doesn't wobble under your weight. It's a small detail, almost boring, and that's why it's so soothing. The builders didn't gamble with the ground. The Giza Plateau is limestone, a kind of stone that feels like it belongs to places that used to be underwater, because in a way it does. Long before kings and names and dynasties, this was seabed. Layers compacted, pressed, settled, turn into a pale rock that holds shape without being fussy. You can't see the ancient ocean in the dark, but you can feel its legacy in the way the ground is steady, in the way the plateau resists your footsteps. Even time, the biggest bully of them all, has a harder time bullying solid limestone. That matters more than people realize. A pyramid is heavy in a way your mind can't fully picture until you stand near it. The only reason it can sit here for millennia without sliding, cracking itself apart, or sinking into the earth like a ship into mud is because the land underneath is stubborn. The plateau is the quiet partner that never gets credit. Everyone talks about the stones you can see, but the real commitment starts below the surface where nobody takes selfies. And the location itself is almost mischievously perfect. Behind you, the city glow. In front of you, the desert dark. Between those two worlds, this plateau rises like a natural stage. You can imagine the ancient view even without the ancient silence. To one side, the Nile's floodplain, fertile and busy, fields and villages, and that green ribbon that made Egypt possible. To the other, the desert, open and unforgiving, a place where the sun turns everything into a test. The pyramids sit right on that threshold, as if they're meant to be seen from the living world but belong, symbolically, to the beyond. That border makes the air feel different too. The breeze has a cleaner edge here, less humid than down by the river, less trapped than inside the city. It moves across the plateau with purpose, slipping around corners, climbing the stone faces, then breaking into softer currents as it passes. It's the kind of wind that doesn't demand attention. It's background music for the very patient. Even your eyes notice the plateau's logic. The pyramids are placed where the ground gives them authority. Not tucked into a valley, not hidden behind a ridge. They occupy high ground without needing to be on a mountain, because the plateau itself offers elevation and visibility. Their silhouettes are designed to rule horizons, and the plateau makes sure there's a horizon to rule. If you built them lower, half their power would be swallowed by the land. Up here, the shape speaks clearly, and the ground doesn't just hold them, it also gave them some of their material. Limestone isn't only the foundation, it's the local resource, close enough to matter. The plateau's own rock became part of the project, which is one of those satisfying practical choices that feels almost modern. Humans have always been humans. If the stone is right there, a short distance away, you use it. You don't drag everything from the ends of the earth just to prove you can, unless you're trying to impress someone at a dinner party. The ancient builders were trying to impress eternity, which is a slightly different audience. The surface under your feet is uneven in a natural way. Small rises, flat stretches, gentle drops that guide your steps without you noticing. In daylight, you'd see how carefully the builders worked with that terrain, leveling areas where needed, carving into the rock in places, making the land cooperate without completely erasing it. It's a quiet type of engineering, shaping the earth just enough so the geometry above can look effortless. Leveling, in particular, is one of those details that sounds dull until you picture it. To place a pyramid so its base sits evenly, you need a level plane across a huge footprint. If your base is slightly slanted, the whole structure would advertise that mistake for thousands of years. Imagine making a tiny error and then watching it endure longer than your entire civilization. No pressure. So the builders had to tame the plateau's surface, flatten it, measure it, adjust it, until it behaved like a controlled starting line. People talk about huge blocks, but the calm genius is in this quieter work, making sure the first course is right. Because if the first layer is precise, everything above has a chance to be precise. If the first layer is sloppy, every layer becomes a slow confession. When you look at the Great Pyramid's base area, even in faint light, it feels intentional. The transition from ground to stone looks less like a pile and more like an interface, like the pyramid is docking into the earth. That's partly because the ground is bedrock close to the surface, and partly because the builders shaped that bedrock to receive the first stones. There's something deeply restful about that idea. Stone meeting stone, weight settling into strength. If your mind drifts toward the famous alignment again, the plateau helps explain the calm behind it. This is an open space, clear sightlines, a sky that isn't blocked by forests or mountains. Tracking stars and shadows becomes more straightforward when the land isn't getting in the way. You can imagine surveyors standing here night after night, watching the slow turn of the sky, using simple observations to find true north with impressive accuracy. It's almost like the plateau itself made the work easier by offering a clean canvas. And that's the thing. The pyramids feel miraculous to modern minds because we're used to miracle stories. But a lot of ancient achievement comes from stacking sensible choices over and over. Choose stable ground. Choose visible ground. Choose accessible ground near the lifeline of your country. Choose a shape that holds itself. Then repeat the small tasks until the big result appears. It's not flashy. It's relentless. And it's strangely comforting because it suggests that greatness can be built from calm decisions rather than dramatic chaos. Your attention slides across the plateau and begins to notice how it organizes your movement. There are natural paths where the ground is easier, where the rock is flatter, where sand hasn't piled too thickly. Even without signs, your body chooses the route that feels right. You're following the same physical logic humans have followed here for a very long time. Move where the land supports you. That creates another soothing thought. The plateau has been walked by countless people, but it hasn't been worn into softness. It stays firm. It keeps its shape. It doesn't absorb footsteps the way a forest path does. It's not sentimental. The plateau doesn't remember you, and that can feel like relief. You can be here without leaving a mark, without needing to matter in a permanent way. The pyramids already took care of permanence on behalf of everyone. Even the way sand behaves around stone adds to the atmosphere. Sand collects in pockets, drifts into corners, climbs up against blocks like it's curious, then slides away again with the wind. It's always moving, but it never wins. The stone faces stay largely clear, the edges stay readable. The desert tries, patiently, to soften everything into the same bland shape, and the pyramids quietly refuse. Watching that slow contest, sand versus stone, can settle the mind. It's change happening at a pace that doesn't demand your reaction. There's another landscape detail people don't always appreciate. The plateau isn't only about height, it's about drainage and stability across seasons. Egypt's climate has patterns, and while the desert is dry, the nearby Nile is not. The builders were careful about where water might run, where the ground might shift, where dampness could creep. Choosing higher limestone ground reduces problems that would come from softer soil. It's the kind of decision you make when you're planning for centuries, not for the next quarterly report. And yes, it's slightly unfair that the pyramids have better long-term planning than most modern meeting agendas, but stone gets to be smug because stone actually commits. From this edge between worlds, you can almost sense why the location carried spiritual meaning. To the ancient Egyptians, the West was associated with the setting sun and the realm of the dead. The pyramids are on the west bank of the Nile, where the sun disappears each evening. The landscape itself turns daily astronomy into symbolism. Sunset isn't just pretty. It's a ritual the land performs every day, reinforcing the story the pyramids were built to tell. Even if you don't share the belief system, you can appreciate the elegance of placing a monument where nature keeps repeating the same metaphor. And because this is nighttime, the sun isn't here to dominate the mood. You get the quieter version of the symbolism. You can picture the day, gold light on pale stone, heat shimmer, the sharp contrast to shadow, and then let it fade out again. What remains is the feeling of structure and placement. A monument built where it can speak to sky, river, and desert all at once. You shift your weight, feel the grit under your shoes, and notice how the air up here is cooler than you expected. The plateau isn't just a stage, it's a climate decision too. Higher ground catches more breeze. Less moisture lingers. Nights cool faster. The stone itself holds temperature differently than sand. Close to the pyramid's base, there's a faint sense of stored coolness, as if the structure has been collecting the night's calm for thousands of years and is willing to share a little. Your gaze returns to the Great Pyramid's slope, rising into darkness, and the land beneath it feels even more significant. It isn't only supporting the monument, it's helping it feel inevitable. Like the pyramid belongs here the way a cliff belongs to a coastline. Like you could remove it, but the land would still remember the space it occupied. And somewhere in that thought, curiosity starts to sharpen again. Not in a restless way, but in a gentle, forward-pulling way. Because if the land was chosen so carefully, then everything else was chosen carefully too. Where people lived while building, where they ate, where they rested, how the workday moved with the light, how the entire human machine fit into this landscape without breaking it. The plateau holds the stones, but it also held the lives that arranged them. And that's a different kind of weight. Lighter than limestone, heavier than it sounds. The thought of lives held here, lighter than limestone, heavier than it sounds, keeps tugging at your attention because monuments always try to steal the whole story. They stand so tall you forget to look for the human-scale world tucked beside them. But the plateau, stubborn as it is, doesn't only carry stone. It carried schedules. It carried gossip. It carried sore shoulders and warm bread, and the kind of routine that makes impossible work feel, on certain days, almost normal. When people picture the pyramid builders, they tend to imagine a single dramatic scene. A mass of silent, suffering bodies hauling blocks under a cruel sun. That's the movie version. Real life, even in the ancient world, ran on something quieter and more practical. A project this large needed planning that wouldn't collapse the moment someone had a bad day. It needed workers who were fed, organized, replaced when tired, treated when injured, and kept moving by the gentle pressure of routine. Not because the world was kind, but because even a pharaoh can't argue with logistics. Close your eyes for a second and imagine the sound of a workday beginning, not as a grand trumpet, but as the low stir of a camp that knows the drill. The sky is still dim. The air is cooler than it will be later. Somewhere, a fire has been kept alive through the night, the coals guarded like a small treasure. Someone shakes ash free and adds fuel. A pot shifts. A murmur passes through sleeping spaces as bodies sit up, stretch, roll shoulders that will soon have to cooperate with heavy tasks. There's bread. Always bread. Not delicate, Instagram-perfect bread, but bread with a job to do. Dense enough to carry energy. Reliable enough to be made in volume. You can almost smell it. warm grain, smoke, that slightly sour edge that comes from dough doing its slow, invisible work. Baking at scale becomes its own kind of industry, and the Pyramid Project was basically a small city that existed to feed and coordinate labor. It wasn't only stone being shaped here. It was an entire support system. And then there's beer, which sounds like a punchline until you remember that in the ancient world, beer was as much nutrition as it was comfort. Mild, thick, full of calories, safer than questionable water in many situations, and familiar in a way the body trusts. Think of it less like a modern crack, open a cold one moment, and more like a steady ration that helps keep people working and hydrated. The idea of beer as a workday staple is strangely soothing because it makes the past feel less like a distant myth and more like a place where people still cared about getting through the day without falling apart. Your mind drifts toward the workers' settlement that archaeologists uncovered near Giza. Evidence of organized housing, bakeries, production areas, storage, the kind of layout that suggests the builders weren't just dumped in the sand and told to suffer artistically. A settlement like that implies shifts, rotations, managers, scribes, and all the quiet machinery of administration. The pyramids have their geometry. The workforce had its own geometry too, made of teams and schedules and rations measured out with care. It's calming to picture the rhythm. Dawn work in the cooler hours, then a change in pace as the sun climbs and the heat sharpens. Breaks aren't a luxury in a place like this. They're survival. The day would have been shaped by temperature the way your own day is shaped by meetings and errands. Except their meeting involved moving stone, and your meeting involves pretending an email is urgent when it's not. Perspective is a gift the pyramids hand out for free. You can sense the social texture, too. People working in groups don't stay silent for long. They talk, they tease, they complain, they brag. They turn difficult tasks into shared challenges because shared challenges are easier to carry. There's evidence that worker crews had names, almost like sports teams. Names that can sound surprisingly spirited for something tied to funerary architecture. It's hard to stay in a purely grim narrative when you imagine a crew giving itself a bold name and taking pride in doing the job well. Even 4,500 years ago, humans were still humans. They liked belonging to something. They liked being competent. They liked having a story about themselves that wasn't just "I am tired." Your attention follows that thread into the idea of skill. Pyramid building wasn't only brute strength. It was surveying, stone dressing, hauling, placing, aligning, maintaining tools, repairing equipment, coordinating timing. It required people who understood angles and levels, who could read instructions, who could keep a line straight across distance. A huge portion of the workforce would have been skilled labor. The soothing part is realizing the pyramids are not just proof of power. They're proof of competence on a national scale. And competence has a quieter feel than tyranny. Tyranny shouts. Competence hums. There's a particular calm that comes from imagining the support roles. Someone is responsible for grain storage, making sure nothing spoils. Someone is in charge of distributing rations, which means someone else is keeping records because bureaucracy is older than anyone wants to admit. Someone is maintaining the pathways people walk every day. Someone is washing out containers. Someone is looking after animals. Someone is cleaning up yesterday's mess because today's workday won't wait for you to feel ready. Even the idea of healthcare shows up in the story, and it's not sentimental. Injuries happen when you move heavy things, and you can't keep a workforce functioning if you treat every injury as disposable. Skeletal evidence from worker cemeteries suggests people lived with healed fractures, which implies care, time to recover, and a system that didn't immediately toss someone aside the moment they became inconvenient. That doesn't mean the job was gentle. It means it was organized enough to understand that healthy workers are the only workers who keep the project alive. And that gives the whole plateau a different mood. It's still mysterious and grand, but becomes less alien. The pyramids stop being pure, cold symbols and start feeling like the end result of 1,000 ordinary mornings. Waking, eating, gathering tools, getting assigned a task, doing the task, sweating, resting, eating again, sleeping, repeating. That repetition is what built the world. The food itself carries a story of surprising quality. Evidence suggests the workers ate more than just bare minimum grain. There were animals, cattle, sheep, goats, meat being prepared, which tells you the project had significant resources behind it and that feeding the workforce was taken seriously. The Great Pyramid didn't rise on starvation alone. It rose on calories. If that sounds blunt, it's because it's true. Stone obeys physics. Bodies obey biology. You want bodies to do large things. You feed them like you mean it. Picture the scene in a communal eating area. You can almost hear the scrape of pottery, the clink of something hard against a bowl, the low talk that fills space when people finally sit. The day's strain loosens from shoulders when food appears. There's a simple comfort in the predictability. Bread in hand, beer in a jar, maybe something salty, maybe onions or other pungent foods that keep well and make simple meals feel fuller. A little bitterness, a little sweetness. Enough variety to keep morale from collapsing. Morale is a quiet theme here. A pyramid doesn't only require engineering. It requires a workforce that continues showing up. The ancient administration understood motivation in the way any manager understands it. People work better when they feel part of something and when their basic needs are met. Some are likely compelled by duty, some by pay, some by obligation to the state, some by pride, some by the simple fact that this is what the season demanded. Egypt's agricultural cycle created natural periods when farmers could be redirected to state projects because the river's flood and retreat shaped labor availability. The Nile, in a way, didn't just carry boats and water. It shaped the human calendar. That calendar shaped the pyramid workforce. You're still standing in the cool night, but your mind is busy painting daylight scenes with softer edges. It doesn't feel stressful. It feels like watching a slow documentary inside your head, narrated by someone who knows the plot and doesn't need a rush. The plateau becomes a living space, not just a monument zone, but a place where the smell of baking and brewing once hung in the air, where voices moved between stone walls, where laughter happened because laughter always happens wherever humans gather for long enough. There's gentle sarcasm waiting in the modern myth that these structures must have been built by slaves, as if a civilization capable of organizing grain taxes, river transport, surveying, stonework, and long-term planning somehow couldn't figure out how to organize a paid, rotated labor force. That myth survives partly because it makes the story simple, and simple stories are easy to repeat. The real story is more interesting, and also more restful because it's rooted in systems rather than cruelty as a plot device. The pyramids become a triumph of coordination. The kind of coordination that still makes modern projects look a little embarrassed. Imagine the scribes. They don't haul stones. They haul information. They count. They record deliveries. They track rations. They note absences. They probably get blamed when something goes wrong, because some traditions are truly timeless. Their work is invisible in the final silhouette, yet without it the whole operation would lose its rhythm. A pyramid is an orchestra. You see the stage, you don't see the sheet music. There's also the soundscape of labor that can feel oddly calming when imagined from a distance. Not the dramatic cracking whip fantasy, but the real noises of work. Stone on stone, wood creaking, voices calling out timing, the thud of something heavy being set down, the hiss of breath when a group lifts together, the short pause after effort when silence becomes noticeable for a heartbeat. Work sounds have a tempo. When the tempo is steady, it can soothe the mind the way a train rhythm soothes a tired traveler. Your attention shifts again to the structures themselves, and you realize the workers' routines are embedded into them. Every layer of stones implies a previous day's plan. Every straight line implies repeated checking. Every corner implies someone caring enough to adjust, to shave, to fit, to correct. The pyramid is the fossil of labor habits, habits built from food and rest and organized time. And the grandeur becomes more intense because it becomes more personal. A giant monument is impressive. A giant monument built by countless ordinary people doing ordinary things at an extraordinary scale is even more impressive because it suggests a civilization that could harmonize individuals into a shared purpose without needing magic. Bread and beer don't sound like the ingredients of eternity, yet here they are, quietly stitched into a structure that still holds the night like a calm, triangular mountain. The thought settles in your chest in a gentle way. Somewhere nearby, long ago, someone finished a shift, wiped dust from their hands, and sat down with bread still warm from the fire, beer thick and mild, and looked up at the rising sides of a pyramid that was still incomplete. They would have seen the same sky, the same edge of desert darkness. They would have felt tired. They might have felt proud. They might have felt annoyed. They might have felt nothing at all beyond hunger and the desire to sleep. And the next day, they went back because the routine continues, and routine is how the impossible becomes normal. The plateau holds that routine in its silence, and as you keep walking through the night air, the next curiosity begins to form without strain. Food and schedules explain the people, but the stones still had to arrive in the first place. The project wasn't only about building upward. It was about moving the world, quarries, transport, water, and that steady river rhythm that made Egypt feel like one long, patient engine. That question about arrival, the simple, stubborn question of how stone shows up on a plateau that feels like it's perched between worlds, starts to feel less like a puzzle and more like a slow-moving river story. Because Egypt, for all its desert drama, was always a water civilization pretending to be a sand civilization. The desert gets the branding. The Nile does the work. Your mind slides away from the workers' settlement, away from the warmth of bread and the mild comfort of beer, and it follows the path of a single block before it ever becomes part of a pyramid wall. Not the glamorous part where people point and gasp, but the earlier part where the stone is still asleep inside the earth, and someone has to wake it up. Limestone is the first quiet character in this story. It's everywhere here, and that everywhere matters. The Giza Plateau is made of it, and large amounts of the pyramid core are made from limestone quarried nearby. That's not romance. That's supply chain sanity. You can picture a quarry in the low light of early morning. Cut faces of rock, sharp edges, tool marks, dust that clings to everything. A stone block begins as a rectangle suggested by lines. Someone scores the rock, wedges appear, and with enough patient force the earth gives up a piece of itself. The act of quarrying has its own rhythm. Not frantic, not cinematic. More like woodworking, but with stone that refuses to be rushed. Chisel, tap, listen, adjust, repeat. When a block finally separates, it doesn't leap free. It releases with a heavy sigh, and the people around it react with the kind of satisfaction you get from stubborn things finally cooperating. That block isn't a pyramid yet. It's simply weight. It has to move. This is where the Nile enters like the calm mastermind it has always been. Roads in ancient Egypt weren't the main arteries. The river was. It was the highway, the calendar, the economy, the mood. When the Nile rose and spread across its floodplain, it didn't just water fields, it reset the nation. When it retreated, it left behind fertile silt and a predictable rhythm people could plan around with almost unbelievable confidence. That predictability is restful to think about. Modern life gives you weather apps that still surprise you. Ancient Egypt had the river itself, doing its seasonal performance year after year, so reliably that you could build a civilization's entire labor strategy on it. People learned to listen to water the way you listen to a clock. So imagine transport not as one heroic haul through endless sand, but as a series of sensible steps. Stone from local quarries could be dragged short distances over prepared surfaces, then moved toward water routes. For certain prized limestone, especially the beautiful white casing stone that once made the pyramid shine, the story gets even more water-shaped. There's a particular kind of limestone that came from across the river, from quarries that produce stones so fine and bright it could make a giant monument look like it was wearing sunlight. In its original form, the Great Pyramid likely had casing stones that fit so closely and reflected so much light that the whole structure would have looked smoother and brighter than the rough, stepped appearance you see today. The idea is almost unfair. It wasn't only enormous, it was elegant. Those casing stones had to travel. And that's where the river becomes your mental soundtrack. Slow or strokes, the creak of wood, the soft slap of water against a hull. Barges carrying stone are not glamorous, but they're steady. They float what humans can't comfortably carry. They turn weight into something manageable. Think about how calming it is that water does this without drama. You put something heavy on a boat, and the water accepts the job. It doesn't complain. It doesn't ask for a raise. It just lifts. The transport season would have been tied to water levels in canals. It's likely that channels and harbors near Giza allowed barges to come close to the plateau, turning a long land journey into a shorter, more controlled haul. That matters because dragging stone over land is exhausting in a way your bones can imagine. Dragging it for a little while is one thing. Dragging it forever is how you start inventing supernatural explanations to protect your sanity. And there's a detail that makes this whole scene feel suddenly intimate. We have surviving records from ancient Egypt that read like logistics notes, not legends. A man involved in moving stone, more of a manager than a mystic, kept track of shipments and days in a way that feels oddly familiar. Not because the words are the same as modern project management, but because the mindset is deliveries, teams, time, progress. The pyramids weren't only built with muscle. They were built with people who knew how to count and plan. Your mind follows a barge at dawn. The river is wide, cool, and patient. The stone sits low in the vessel, wrapped in ropes, balanced so the boat doesn't become an expensive mistake. The crew moves with practiced ease. They've done this trip before. They know the currents and the bends, the places where the river is kind and the places where it pretends not to see you. On the bank, life continues. Fields, birds, the occasional shout from someone coordinating a landing. The river carries the stone through a landscape that is both ordinary and sacred. Ordinary because people live here, sacred because this water is the reason anything survives here at all. When you picture it this way, the pyramids stop feeling like objects imposed on Egypt. They start feeling like an expression of Egypt's main rhythm. At the landing point near Giza, the calm breaks into activity. Ropes tighten. Wooden rollers might be positioned. Sledges appear, simple platforms designed to carry heavy loads over ground. You can hear the scrape as the sledge begins to move. And here's another quiet, practical trick. Friction is the enemy, so you reduce it. Wet sand, surprisingly, can help. A little water changes the way grains behave, making the surface firmer and easier for a heavy sledge to slide over. It's not magic. It's materials science discovered by people who had every incentive to pay attention. This is the kind of fact that feels soothing because it replaces the impossible with the clever. Water on sand. A simple adjustment with huge payoff. Like someone in a meeting saying, "What if we just made it a little easier?" and then actually doing it. You can almost see the scene. A line of workers pulling a sledge with ropes, bodies leaning forward in unison. Someone at the front calls the pace, because humans pull better when their effort is synchronized. Another person pours water ahead of the runners. The sledge slides more smoothly. The team doesn't cheer. They just keep moving because the prize is not applause. The prize is progress. And progress, measured day after day, becomes the pyramid. The Nile's role doesn't end at limestone, either. Granite, harder, darker, heavier, came from far to the south. Those granite blocks, used in important internal spaces like chambers and structural elements, add another layer of awe to the transport story. Moving granite over long distances would have been a major operation, and once again, the river is what makes it possible. Over land, that weight would be punishing. Over water, it becomes a slow, controlled journey. The sheer distance adds a quiet grandeur. Stone from the south traveling north, carried by the Nile's steady flow, arriving at Giza as if the whole country is contributing to a single idea. It's not just one site building a monument. It's a civilization using its central artery to gather materials, skills, and time into one location. You can feel how this would have shaped the workers' experience too. When shipments arrive, the site changes mood. There's a sense of momentum, like a machine receiving fuel. The bakers are still baking, the brewers still brewing, the crews still rotating, but a new batch of stone means new tasks, new goals, fresh markers of progress. Someone counts the blocks as they come off the boats, not because counting is fun, but because counting is control. Control is what keeps a project from dissolving into chaos. There's a gentle irony in how modern people think of the pyramids as symbols of mystery, while the ancient builders were probably thinking about very unmysterious problems. How many blocks arrive today? How many ropes need replacing? Whether the canal is navigable? Whether a crew leader is injured? Whether the bread supply is holding? Mystery is what you get when you're looking back from far away. At the time, it was Tuesday. A very long Tuesday, sure, but still. Still, even in the logistics, mystery seeps in. Not the flashy kind, but the quiet kind that keeps your curiosity alive. You can picture the river at night, boats moored, stones sleeping in their holds, crews resting under the open sky. The pyramids on the horizon are incomplete, the top still far away, the sides stepping upward in rough tiers. In the darkness, you can't see the fine alignment work happening, only the shape emerging. That emergence is its own kind of suspense. A monument is forming, and everyone involved can feel it, even if they're too tired to talk about it. The river makes time feel different in this story. Barges take days. Canals fill and empty with seasons. Work crews rotate with agricultural rhythms. Instead of fast deliveries and instant updates, there's a slower confidence. If you plan properly, the river will bring what you need. If you respect the season will support you. It's like the entire project is built inside a giant breathing pattern. Flood, retreat, work, rest, repeating until stone becomes skyline. And your own breathing matches that without being told. The mind likes steady processes when it's ready for sleep. It likes systems at work. It likes imagining efforts spread across time instead of crushed into a frantic moment. The Nile offers that mental comfort. A long, calm conveyor belt that doesn't rush because it doesn't have to. Your gaze returns to the pyramid faces in the darkness, and the thought of their original brightness lingers. Those casing stones, when they were intact, would have turned moonlight into a kind of glow. Imagine standing here thousands of years ago and seeing the Great Pyramid not as a rough, stepped giant, but as a smooth, pale mountain of stone, edges crisp, surface tight, catching light like a blade catches sun. The monument would have looked less like ruins and more like something freshly decided by a confident civilization. And then history happens. Stones get reused. Earthquakes loosen. People pull away the beautiful outer skin for other building projects. The pyramid becomes the core we see today, still immense, still dominant, but more raw, like a statue with its polished surface worn away, revealing the structure beneath. The absence becomes part of the story, and absence has its own kind of quiet power. But that comes later. For the moment, your mind stays in the living construction world where stone is arriving, where the river's rhythm is feeding the plateau, where a nation's movement is funneled into one place. You can almost hear the water again, and it blends with the desert wind as if the two are sharing a secret. The pyramids sit between them, listening, and as the last imagined barge unloads, another curiosity rises without effort. Water can deliver stone, but it can't lift it into the air. A pyramid still grows upward course by course, and at some point the questions shift from how did it get here to how did it climb? Because stone doesn't like stairs, and yet somehow it reached the sky. Stone doesn't climb, not on its own, and it definitely doesn't climb politely. It sits there with all its mass and basically dares you to argue with physics. That's what makes the pyramids so calming to think about at night. The people who built them didn't defeat physics. They persuaded it, quietly, repeatedly, with tools so simple they feel almost insulting to the size of the result. You've already followed a block from quarry to river to landing, seen it sliding on a sledge with a thin sheen of water, turning gritty sand into a smoother road. The next problem is the one that makes everyone's eyebrows lift. How does that block rise, layer by layer, until it's part of a slope that ends at a point? The answer begins with an idea so basic it feels like it should be printed on a napkin: an inclined plane. A ramp. You lift this into pull this upward gradually. You trade a sharp vertical fight for a longer, calmer struggle. And suddenly your hands and ropes and legs have a chance. If you've ever dragged a heavy suitcase up a curb, you understand the principle. You didn't float it. You didn't summon invisible forces. You just found an angle that felt manageable and used momentum. Ancient builders did the same thing, except their curb was the side of a monument that wanted to become a mountain. So picture the construction site not as a bare pyramid rising alone, but as a landscape of temporary structures built around it. Ramps of packed earth, rubble, and stone chips. Pathways kept clear by crews whose job is mostly to make sure everyone else can do their job. Staging areas where blocks wait in quiet piles, like guests at a very serious party. The ramp itself could take different forms. And the soothing truth is that it probably wasn't only one form for the entire build. People like a single clean answer. Reality likes adaptations. A straight ramp running up one face sounds simple. And it is, but it has a catch. As the pyramid grows taller, the ramp would need to become very long if you want to keep the slope gentle enough for hauling. A gentle slope makes pulling easier, but it costs you length. A steep slope saves length but costs you bodies and control. Ancient builders weren't interested in losing control. A block that slides backward is not just inconvenient. It's a morale issue with a sharp edge. So a straight ramp might work well early on, when the pyramid is still low and the distance doesn't become ridiculous. The first courses are the heavy foundation of the whole project, and having a direct approach makes sense. You can imagine the ramp as a wide, compacted road, repaired constantly, because a road made of loose material never stays perfect for long. People would bring in rubble, tamp it down, keep it firm enough to take weight. It's unglamorous work, but it's the kind of work that makes everything else possible. Then, as height increases, the ramp strategy could shift. A ramp could angle around the pyramid like a path that wraps, climbing gradually as it circles. That keeps the slope manageable without needing an absurd distance in one direction. It also changes the site's choreography. The hauling teams disappear and reappear as they round corners, like a slow procession, always moving, always climbing, never needing to face the full height all at once. Another possibility is a zigzag ramp that switches back and forth across a face like a mountain trail. That keeps the climb steady, gives room for crews to move and turn, and reduces how far the ramp must extend outward. Turning a loaded sledge isn't elegant, but it can be engineered. Space at the switchbacks, careful timing, foreman calling pace, the same human synchronization that kept bread and beer turning into daily work. And then there's the idea that feels almost too neat, which is why it keeps people awake. Internal ramps, passage-like routes inside the growing structure, allowing blocks to be hauled upward within the pyramid's body. It's an intriguing concept because it would keep the exterior cleaner as the pyramid rises, and it fits the general theme of ancient builders doing clever things with limited tools. Whether you prefer this idea or not, it's worth holding it lightly, like a mystery you don't need to solve tonight. What matters is the principle. The path upward is controlled, gradual, and repeatable. Repeatable is the key word that makes the whole process feel less like a miracle and more like a machine. A ramp is only part of it. The next part is coordination, human bodies acting like a single engine. One person pulling a rope is a struggle. 20 people pulling the same rope with the same timing becomes momentum. You can almost hear it. Not a dramatic soundtrack, but a work rhythm. A leader calling a count, voices answering, the rope tightening, feet digging in, the sledge shivering forward. The sound of wood runners sliding, the scrape changing pitch when the surface is just right. Someone splashes water ahead, the sand darkens, the friction eases, and the whole team feels the difference instantly, like the load suddenly stopped being stubborn for a moment. That moment matters psychologically. It teaches the crew that small adjustments contain big weight. It keeps the work from feeling like endless punishment. It turns it into a solvable problem repeated all day. Between pulls, the block rests. That rest isn't laziness. It's control. You don't want a sledge racing forward like it got excited. You want it to move on command. You want the rope to stay taut, the path clear, the timing shared. So there are pauses, short, practical pauses where hands shift, shoulders reset, breath returns, and someone checks the runners, checks the rope fibers, checks the route ahead. And then it moves again. At the top of a ramp segment, the block reaches a platform or a working level where precision begins to matter more than raw movement. This is where levers become the quiet heroes. A lever is a simple thing. A sturdy beam, a pivot point, and the willingness to push down so something heavy can lift a little. That little lift is everything. A few centimeters is enough to slide in a shim, to adjust a block's position, to nudge it closer to the line it needs to respect. You don't need to lift a multi-ton block into the air. You need to coax it into place, one careful nudge at a time. So you can imagine a team surrounding a block as it arrives, some steadying it, some guiding it, some using lever bars to inch it toward the correct position. It's slow, but it's calm. This isn't the moment for heroics. It's the moment for patience. One careless shove could chip an edge, ruin a fit, force rework. Ancient builders understood something modern people still struggle with. Mistakes are expensive, and the cheapest mistake is the one you prevent. The precision work has its own sound. Less scraping, more tapping. Stone on stone, but gently. A lever creaks. A wedge slides in. Someone checks alignment by eye, then by tool. Someone adjusts again. The block settles with a deep, satisfying thud that sounds almost like the structure exhaling. That settling is what your nervous system likes. The idea of something heavy finding its intended home. The world becoming a little more ordered. This is also where teamwork becomes more than just pulling together. It becomes specialization. Some people are haulers, built for endurance and rhythm. Some are stone dressers, trimming surfaces so they fit. Some are supervisors, reading the plan of the day and keeping crews from colliding like confused ants. Some are tool keepers, because a broken tool can stall an entire process. Some are water runners, keeping the hauling path workable. Some are the quiet problem solvers who notice that today's sand is looser and the ramp needs more packing before anyone risks a heavy load. You can picture the ramp itself being maintained like a living thing. Packed down, widened where traffic increases, repaired where grooves form. If the ramp is too soft, the sledge sinks and everyone suffers. If it's too rough, friction eats energy and tempers. So the ramp crew keeps it in that sweet spot, firm, smooth enough, reliable. A good ramp is boring, and boring is exactly what you want when you're moving stone up a monument. Even the ropes deserve a moment of respect. Rope is not an afterthought, it's technology. Strong fiber, braided for strength, inspected for wear. A frayed rope is a disaster waiting for a bad second. So you imagine someone whose job is to watch ropes, replace them before they fail, keep the system safe enough that work can continue without panic. Safety in the ancient world didn't look like modern safety, but competence still existed because competence keeps people alive and projects moving. The whole operation becomes a kind of choreography. Blocks arriving, blocks staged, blocks hauled, blocks levered, blocks set. While one team pulls a sledge, another is preparing the next path segment, another is shaping the next stone, another is ensuring the working surface is clean enough for precise placement. When it works well, it's like watching gears turn in slow motion. The grandeur is in the coordination more than the muscle. And this is where your earlier images, bread, beer, rest, return as quiet anchors. A workforce can only maintain this level of synchronization if it has routine and recovery. Hauling requires energy. Levering requires focus. Focus requires sleep. Sleep requires that someone made a place safe enough to sleep and food steady enough to trust. One piece of the system fails, the whole rhythm stutters. That's why the pyramids feel like a civilization's full-body effort. They're not just stones stacked upward. They're thousands of people and thousands of decisions agreeing to cooperate with the same physics every day for years. If you want a final calming picture of the ramp process, hold this. The pyramid isn't built by one dramatic lift. It's built by 1,000 small, controlled movements. A block slides a little. A lever raises it a little. A wedge nudges it a little. The block settles. The line stays true. The surface stays level. Then the next block arrives, and the same calm ritual repeats. And as the courses climb higher, something subtle happens. The work becomes more dependent on measurement and consistency. The shape demands discipline. Each course must respect the angles established below it. Tiny errors become louder as height increases, like a whisper turning into an echo. That's when the builder's relationship with geometry stops being a nice idea and becomes the silent law of the entire project. That discipline sharpening as the target narrows is where the pyramids start to feel less like a pile of stone and more like a calm argument made with geometry. The shape doesn't negotiate. It doesn't forgive sloppy. It accepts only what fits the rule, and that rule stays the same whether the workday is easy or brutal. From far away, the Great Pyramid reads as one simple idea, for sides rising to a point. Up close, the simplicity becomes the scary part, because simple forms expose everything. If one corner drifts, the whole face looks wrong. If one course tilts, the entire monument carries that tilt forever. A pyramid is honest in a way most buildings avoid. The soothing part is how carefully the builders prepared for that honesty. Before a single block could play its part, the ground had to become reliable. The Giza bedrock isn't a soft, forgiving soil. It's limestone close to the surface, strong and stubborn, and still it needed shaping. High spots cut down, low spots corrected, the whole footprint treated like something that must be trusted. A clean foundation isn't glamorous, but it's the kind of quiet competence that makes the rest of the story possible. Water likely helped with leveling, because water is the ultimate referee. Water doesn't care about opinions. Fill a shallow trench, and it shows a true level line without arguing. Even without trenches, a simple frame with a plumb line can tell you what vertical means, and once vertical is honest, horizontal becomes easier to police. It's comforting to picture that strings, weights, and water doing the job that modern people assign to lasers. Not because lasers are magical, but because truth is truth no matter what century you're standing in. Then comes direction. The pyramid's faces are aligned extremely closely to the cardinal points. People can debate the exact method, but the vibe of the method is consistent. Patient observation. The thought of surveyors standing in the cool dark, watching the sky like it's a slow-turning machine, adjusting a line by a finger's width, then doing it again because pretty close still isn't close enough, has a gentle calm to it. Focus without panic. Pride without noise. A right angle seems simple until it's enormous. On a small surface, a square can be faked. On a base that stretches farther than your eye wants to measure, squareness becomes a project. The builders needed ways to reproduce right angles and straight lines at scale. Taut chords turn straight into something you can see and touch. Plumb bobs turn vertical into something you can verify. Diagonals give the square a built-in honesty test. If the diagonals agree, the corners are behaving. Even a rope arranged into a dependable triangle can become a practical right-angle tool when the proportions are controlled and repeated consistently. Standard measurement turns from trivia into survival here. When hundreds of hands work on the same structure, agreement matters more than brilliance. A shared unit, cubit length, smaller divisions, consistent rods, keeps teams from building slightly different versions of reality. The measuring rod becomes a quiet authority. If the rod is wrong, the whole pyramid becomes wrong in a coordinated way, which is the kind of mistake that doesn't cancel out, it compounds. So you can imagine those standards being guarded, copied, checked, and treated with the kind of seriousness usually reserved for things that keep people fed and safe. Once the base is established, the pyramid becomes a machine for controlling error. A course goes down, and then another course goes down on top of it, each one slightly smaller, each one stepping inward according to a rule. Ancient Egyptians had a practical way to describe slope, less about degrees and more about how far inward a face moves for a certain rise. It turns an abstract angle into a work instruction your body can follow even when you're tired. Up this much and that much again and again. That kind of rule fits the whole feel of the site. Repeatable, steady, built for humans who wake up, eat bread, do the work, drink their mild beer, and show up again. Those rules create a calming visual rhythm. Each layer tightens the form, the sides pulling toward the center like a slow gathering. The structure grows, and yet it becomes more focused as it rises. That's part of why the silhouette feels so steady at night. Your brain loves shapes that narrow with purpose. It feels like progress made visible. And here's the quietly fascinating twist. The faces you imagine as perfectly flat may not be perfectly flat. Evidence suggests the faces might be very slightly concave, a subtle inward curve, so gentle it disappears unless you know to look for it. That tiny quirk feels like a wink from the past. The pyramid is famous for precision, yet it still holds secrets in millimeters. That combination, discipline plus quiet oddities, keeps your curiosity awake without making your body tense. Perfection, in this setting, isn't a mythical state. It's tolerance. It's deciding what accurate enough means when the audience is time itself. The Great Pyramid is astonishingly level and aligned, and still, it is not a flawless geometric ideal. Side lengths vary a little. Orientation is off by a tiny amount. Corners aren't mathematically perfect points. The comforting part is that none of this weakens the monument's power. It strengthens it. It proves humans built it. It proves standards were high, not supernatural. It proves that a structure can be both disciplined and alive with small, human fingerprints. The joints between stones are where geometry becomes intimate. A block doesn't need to be pretty to hold weight, but it does need to sit properly. The core masonry had to be stable, courses fairly even, contact surfaces secure enough that the load moved down into the bedrock without creating weak spots. The original casing stones, the smooth outer skin that once covered the pyramid, took this intimacy to a different level. Those stones were dressed and fitted so tightly that the pyramid's surface read as clean and continuous, catching light like a single object rather than a stack of parts. That kind of fit is soothing to imagine because it's friction removed from the world. A door that closes without catching. A drawer that slides without scraping. Your brain relaxes when the environment behaves. The casing stones were an environment that behaved. Corners are the pyramid's most unforgiving judges. A corner is where two faces have to agree, where lines meet and expose any wandering. Keeping corners crisp over many courses demands constant attention. Corners also make excellent reference points. They can anchor chords, re-establish straight lines, and keep the structure honest as it grows. Picture a cord pulled taut from corner to corner, defining straightness in the air, while a plumb line defines vertical truth nearby. Together, they create an invisible scaffold, a grid you can't see but can trust, guiding the stone the way a quiet melody guides a singer. The invisible scaffold idea feels restful. The most important structure on the site might have been made of cords, weights, and repeated checking rather than with beams and loud machinery. The visible pyramid rises. The invisible pyramid of measurements rises with it. always slightly ahead, always defining what correct means before stone commits to it. As height increases, the target narrows. Early on, a small error can be absorbed by the sheer size of the base. Near the top, there's nowhere left to hide. Each course reduces the footprint. Each layer tightens the acceptable margin. That pressure could have made the work frantic. Instead, everything we know about the results suggests the opposite. The checking stayed steady. The discipline held. It's hard not to feel a little gentle sarcasm toward modern life here. People struggle to hang a picture frame straight without stepping back, tilting their head, and still surrendering to close enough. These builders kept a colossal structure aligned over years, using tools that boiled down to rope, weight, water, and an almost stubborn respect for measurement. The pyramid doesn't only dominate the horizon, it quietly exposes how often good enough is just impatience wearing a suit. Standing near the stone in cool night air, the geometry stops feeling like math and starts feeling like a lullaby made of straight lines. Edges guide your attention upward without forcing it. The slope stays constant enough to feel safe. The corners stay sharp enough to feel intentional. Your mind, which spends so much time wrestling messy problems, gets to rest against something clean and confident. Even the imperfections contribute to that confidence. They keep the pyramid from turning sterile. They remind you this isn't a symbol that arrived whole. It's hands, tools, breath, fatigue, and standards held steady over time. That steadiness points your curiosity upward again, away from ground lines and into the night sky, because a structure this aligned seems to be listening for something above it. Your attention has already lifted from the clean, disciplined lines of stone to the cleaner, older lines of the sky, because the pyramids have a way of doing that. They're built like they're listening upward. Standing here, you start noticing how the night itself feels organized. The stars aren't random glitter. They form patterns your brain wants to connect, even if you don't know their names. And it's quietly thrilling to remember that the people who built these pyramids didn't look up for inspiration the way modern people do, half distracted, half scrolling. They looked up because the sky was a tool, and also a story, and also a promise. The Great Pyramid's near cardinal alignment stops being a fun fact and becomes a scene. You can almost see the ancient surveyors on this same plateau in a night not so different from yours. Cool air, wide horizons, no neon haze. They're not surrounded by drama. They're surrounded by patience. A small group, a few simple instruments, and the kind of focus that feels almost sacred because it's so rare. The simplest way to feel what they were doing is to feel how difficult it is to find true north without being handed a compass. Modern life makes you lazy about direction. You glance at a phone and it tells you where you are and where you're going and how many minutes until you arrive, as if the planet is a well-behaved spreadsheet. Out here, with only your senses, north is an idea you have to earn. The sky helps. Certain stars never really leave the night. They circle and circle around a point, a calm pivot above the northern horizon. Those stars were especially meaningful to ancient Egyptians, often called the imperishable ones because they didn't rise and set the way other stars do. They just keep turning night after night, refusing to disappear. That a very pyramid kind of mood, permanence as a concept you can actually see. If you want one of the most soothing images tied to pyramid alignment, hold this. Two stars moving slowly in the dark, and a human being waiting for a precise moment when they line up. Not with theatrics, with quiet discipline. When the stars reach a particular alignment, one above the other, or crossing an imagined line, the surveyor marks the direction. They repeat it. They check it again. They treat the sky like a measuring instrument that takes its time because it does. This method isn't about mysticism. It's astronomy used as engineering. And it's relaxing because it's slow by design. The sky doesn't rush. It doesn't care about your deadlines. It gives you a steady motion you can rely on if you're willing to be patient enough to watch. Daylight offers its own version of direction finding, and it's almost comically simple in a way that makes you respect it more. A vertical stick. A shadow. The sun moves. The shadow moves. Mark the shadow's tip at different times. Create a curve. Find the line that reveals east and west, then build north and south from that. There's something deeply comforting about this. The universe hands you a free measuring device every morning, and all you have to do is pay attention long enough to use it. Paying attention is the real technology here. Once the builders had true directions, those directions became the invisible scaffold again. Cords pulled tight, right angles checked, baselines laid down with a seriousness that would make modern contractors feel slightly judged. The pyramid's faces could then be oriented to those lines. Stone follows the rules you set early. Stone doesn't improvise. It just commits. And that commitment to the sky wasn't only practical. It was meaningful. Ancient Egyptian belief linked the afterlife with celestial cycles, with the sun's journey and the star's endurance. The West Bank, the setting sun, the realm of the dead. Those symbols are already written into the landscape. The sky writes the rest. A pyramid is a giant statement built at the intersection of earth and heaven, where land, river, sun, and star paths meet. When you look up from the plateau, you can imagine the same stars above a pyramid that's still new, still wearing its smooth casing stones, still bright enough to catch moonlight and return it like a quiet glow. The edges would have looked sharper then, the surface cleaner, the form even more geometric, like a perfect signal to the sky. It's hard not to feel that the builders intended the pyramid to behave like a landmark not only for humans, but for the cosmos itself. Inside the Great Pyramid, this upward conversation may continue in a more secretive way. There are narrow shafts leading out from the king's chamber and the queen's chamber. Thin passages that don't feel designed for people to walk through, more like channels. Over the years, many have suggested these shafts point towards significant stars or star regions, possibly tied to royal and religious symbolism. Some interpretations connect them with Orion, Sirius, or circumpolar stars, celestial references that carried meaning in Egyptian thought. The exact intent is debated, but the existence of those shafts still holds a quiet wonder. Even inside the pyramid, there are directions that seem to care about the sky. That idea is perfect for a night like this because it keeps the mystery gentle. It isn't asking you to solve anything. It's simply offering the image of stone corridors aligned with invisible points of light, as if the pyramid contains a memory of the night it was built under. A structure with its own idea of up. You can feel how shadows would have been part of daily work as well. Shadows aren't just pretty lines. On a construction site, shadow is feedback. A straight edge throws a straight shadow. An uneven surface breaks the line. A corner casts a clean diagonal. Light and shadow become a constant, quiet test of whether the geometry is behaving. The builders didn't need lasers. They had the sun's blunt honesty. If a face is crooked, the shadow will tell on you all afternoon. There's something soothing in how merciless and helpful that is. The universe doesn't hide mistakes. It illuminates them, literally, and gives you time to fix them before they harden into permanence. At night, the shadows soften, and that softness changes the mood of the pyramids. Their sharp lines become silhouettes. Their surfaces lose detail. The structures feel older, simpler, more like the concept of pyramid than a specific pile of blocks. That's another reason people find them calming in low light. The brain is freed from clutter. It can rest in the outline, but the outline still holds secrets. Even in darkness, you can sense the precision of the edges, the way corners stay readable at distance, the way the faces lean inward at a consistent angle. Your mind recognizes the stability. It's the same kind of calm you feel in a room where everything is symmetrical and nothing is out of place. The pyramid is that room, except it's open to the sky and big enough to swallow a neighborhood. The stars overhead also carry a more emotional kind of precision, timekeeping. The night sky is an ancient clock that ticks slowly. Stars rise and set with regularity. Seasons shift their patterns. Over years, the sky changes in subtler ways too, slow movements that would have been noticed by generations who paid attention. For the pyramid builders, this wasn't just background. It was the framework of time. The pyramid becomes a monument not only in space, but in time, tied to a sky that repeats, yet never repeats exactly. That combination, repeatable but never identical, is one of the most relaxing things to hold when you're trying to sleep. Your life can feel like it's stuck in loops, but the sky reminds you that cycles also contain gentle change. The pyramids remind you that steady effort can create something that lasts. Together, they make a quiet argument against panic. Your mind might briefly wander to the idea that pyramids are like frozen sunbeams. It sounds poetic, and it also makes a weird amount of sense. The sides are triangular planes, rising like light rays captured in stone. They were built in a culture where the sun's journey was central, where dawn and dusk weren't just lighting changes but spiritual events. A pyramid doesn't move, yet it participates in the daily motion of light. Morning sun slides down a face. Afternoon sun warms another. Evening shadow stretches across the plateau like a slow curtain. Even the placement of associated structures, causeways, temples, satellite pyramids, often shows a relationship to the sun's path in the landscape. It's not random sprawl. It's arranged. These complexes were designed as a whole, with processional routes, sight lines, and transitions between spaces. At night, you don't need to see every feature to feel the intention. The plateau has a planned quality, as if someone took a ruler to the desert and said, "Order belongs here." It's easy to forget how bold that is. The desert is nature's reminder that humans are temporary. The pyramids are a civilization replying calmly, maybe not that temporary. And yet, for all this celestial ambition, the methods remain wonderfully grounded. Rope, shadow, star alignment, repetition. You can feel the comfort in that. The sky is huge, but the tools are small. The project is enormous, but the steps are manageable. That's the same lesson your mind needs at night. Big things become tolerable when you break them into calm, repeatable actions. Your gaze returns to the pyramid's surface again, and the thought forms naturally. If the builders could track stars to find true directions, if they could hold a slope across years of work, then the inside of the pyramid, the parts you can't easily see, must have its own quiet intelligence. The interior passages aren't just holes in stone, they're deliberate routes. They hold cool air, measure angles, hidden spaces. They're the inside of the geometry, where the monument stops being a silhouette and becomes a private world. And that private world is waiting, like a dim corridor just beyond your next step, holding its own hush. That private world inside the geometry is easier to imagine when you remember how the outside behaves at night. Wind brushing stone, sand shifting, the huge silhouette holding still. The inside does the opposite. It shuts the desert out. It takes all that open space and squeezes it into narrow lines and cool darkness, the kind of darkness that doesn't feel scary so much as deliberate. Like the pyramid is asking you to lower your voice. You approach an entrance, and the first thing you notice is how quickly the air changes. Outside, even at night, there's movement, breeze, distant city hum, the faint shiver of sand. Inside, the air feels stored, cooler, steadier, as if the stone has been saving the night's calm for centuries and is still not done sharing it. The temperature doesn't swing the way it does outdoors. Massive stone is good at one thing: refusing to hurry. It warms slowly and cools slowly, and that stubbornness creates a kind of climate that feels almost like a blanket, except it's a blanket made of physics. Your footsteps sound different right away. Outside, the ground absorbs sound with grit and distance. Inside, sound becomes a small echo that returns politely, like it wants to keep you company. Even a breath feels louder. The pyramid turns you into someone who notices simple things: your own pace, your own voice, the soft scrape of a shoe, because there isn't much else competing for attention. The first passages are tight enough to make you feel the design choices. This wasn't built for comfort. It was built for purpose. The angles are measured, the lines controlled, the stone surfaces carefully arranged. You can imagine workers in lamplight, the flicker of flame bouncing off pale limestone, the way shadows would make the corridor feel even narrower. Stone is the most honest material. It doesn't hide what it is. The corridor tells you immediately that the pyramid isn't a hollow monument. It's a solid mountain with a few deliberate cuts inside it. Cuts made with intent, not with spaciousness in mind. The descending passage slopes down at a steady angle, and your body recognizes it the way it recognizes stairs. It forces a rhythm. You step carefully, feeling that subtle forward pull gravity gives you when the ground leans. It's a strange comfort, the fact that even here, inside something so iconic, the same laws apply. Gravity follows you. The pyramid doesn't turn into fantasy just because the walls are ancient. Somewhere in your imagination, a worker is testing that slope. Another worker is smoothing a surface. Someone is checking alignment with chords and plumb lines, because interior corridors don't excuse sloppiness. If anything, they demand more discipline. A passage that drifts offline becomes a headache you can't fix after the fact, because stone does not enjoy being uncarved. Then the path changes direction, and the pyramid reveals one of its most hypnotic features: the way it alternates between tight confinement and sudden, almost theatrical space. One moment you're in a corridor that makes you hunch. The next, you enter a space that feels taller, wider, more open than your body expected. The contrast is so clean it feels like a trick, like the structure is reminding you it can control not just stone, but your perception. The Grand Gallery is the classic example. It's a tall, sloping corridor with a kind of stern elegance. High walls stepping inward as they rise, creating a corbelled shape that is both functional and dramatic. Corbelling is one of those ancient solutions that feels like quiet genius. Instead of spanning a space with a single risky lintel, you gradually shift each layer inward until the gap closes. It's the architectural version of patience. You don't force the stone to do something it hates. You guide it into a shape it can support. Standing there in your mind, you can feel why this space makes people pause. It's not just big, it's intentional big. The walls don't just rise. They lean inward as if they're gently pressing the space into focus. Sound behaves differently here too. The echo, stretched out, softened, like the room is smoothing your words into something less sharp. And notice what happens to your thoughts in a space like that. They slow down because the room is already doing something complex and you don't need to. Your brain likes environments that carry their own order. It stops inventing chaos when it's surrounded by structure. The Grand Gallery also hints at the pyramid's internal problem solving. It wasn't only built to impress. It had to manage forces, weight, pressure, stress traveling through stone. In a structure this massive, weight isn't just down. Weight is a living presence that pushes on every surface. So the builders created ways to direct that pressure, to relieve it, to guide it away from vulnerable spaces. The corbelled forms, the carefully stacked layers, the choice of harder stone in certain places, all of it is a conversation with gravity. That conversation becomes even clearer when you reach the king's chamber, imagined as a calm, rectangular room lined with granite. Granite is a different mood than limestone. Darker, harder, colder to the touch in your imagination. It doesn't feel like local plateau stone. It feels imported, deliberate, chosen because it can handle stress and hold shape with stubborn confidence. Bringing granite from far south, then fitting it inside this mountain of limestone is one of those decisions that quietly signals we are not doing this casually. The ceiling above the chamber brings another soothing fact into the room. It isn't just a flat slab hoping for the best. Above it are relieving spaces, layers and chambers designed to distribute weight and prevent the ceiling from being crushed by the pyramid's mass. Think about that for a moment. They built empty spaces above a chamber inside a solid mountain of stone just to keep the pressure behaving. That kind of planning is almost tender in its own way. Like they anticipated the pyramid's weight as a lifelong responsibility and prepared the structure to carry itself without failure. When people talk about ancient engineering, they often talk about how did they move the stones. That's dramatic. The more interesting part is how did they keep the stones from destroying what mattered. Preventing collapse is a quieter form of genius than building tall. And it's the kind of genius that makes you feel safe enough to relax. In that chamber sits the famous granite sarcophagus, already present during construction because it wouldn't fit through the tight passages later. That detail is a small, satisfying click in the mind. It means the builders were thinking ahead in practical steps. If it won't fit later, it goes in early. No mystical nonsense required, just planning. The sarcophagus itself feels simple, rectangular, heavy, honest. It isn't ornate in the way people expect from royal stories. It's more like the inside of a machine. Functional, solid, meant to remain. There's something calming about that simplicity. The pyramid is the spectacle. The core is straightforward. And then you remember the odd fact that often surprises people. No confirmed mummy of Khufu was found inside the Great Pyramid. The rooms are iconic, the passages famous, the central story enormous. And yet the most expected element, the king's body, doesn't greet you like a neat ending. That absence is one of the reasons the interior keeps its quiet grip on curiosity. The pyramid feels like it should deliver a tidy conclusion, and it doesn't. It offers rooms, alignments, and engineering, then leaves a silence where certainty should be. Silence is powerful here. It's also strangely soothing. Your mind can relax into a mystery that doesn't require solving. It can simply be. The pyramid is not obligated to give you closure. The Queen's Chamber adds another layer of atmosphere. Smaller, calmer, less theatrically imposing, and yet full of questions. Its name is misleading. Likely it wasn't meant for a queen at all, but labels have a way of sticking when they're convenient. The chamber has a different feel, more intimate, and it connects again to those narrow shafts, channels reaching outward, not for people, but for something symbolic, something functional, something we still argue about, because arguing is a human hobby. What stays consistent is the sense of control design. Corridors rise and descend. Angles repeat. The pyramid's interior is a set of decisions, and each decision feels purposeful even when the reason isn't perfectly known. Then there's the way the pyramid seems to include its own security system. There are blocking stones, sealing methods, features designed to close passages and protect what was inside. It's easy to get lost in the drama of traps, but the calmer reality is more like engineered inconvenience. Heavy blocks that can slide or drop into place, passages that can be sealed, routes that become dead ends. Not a booby-trapped movie set, just a serious attempt to keep the interior private after the official purpose had been fulfilled. And it worked, at least for a while. Time eventually defeats almost every barrier humans build, but time works slowly, and the pyramid was built to be slow. Even breaches, even loss, even missing elements. None of it changes the fact that walking through those imagined corridors feels like moving through a mind that valued permanence. Air down here has its own personality. It can feel still, but not stale, more like preserved. Stone absorbs heat and releases it gradually, so the pyramid becomes a thermal buffer. Outside, the desert swings between extremes. Inside, the temperature stays closer to steady, which is one of the reasons these spaces can feel almost restful despite their heaviness. It's a reminder that mass can create comfort, that thickness can create calm, that insulation isn't a modern invention. A pyramid is basically the most dramatic, insulated structure imaginable. Even your breathing changes in the thought of it. You take slower breaths because the space seems to ask for it. Not because you're trying to be poetic, but because the walls make fast breathing feel noisy. This is a place where your body becomes aware of itself in a quiet way. And then there are the surfaces, the small marks that stone keeps. In the right light, You can imagine tool traces, subtle irregularities, the evidence of hands shaping and fitting. These aren't decorative. They're leftovers of work, the same kind of leftovers you see on a wooden table someone built themselves. The pyramid is a masterpiece, yes, but it's also a work-site fossil, and fossils always carry tiny details that make the past feel reachable. That reachability is where your curiosity starts leaning next. Because once you accept that humans did this, humans with routines, humans with tools, humans with rope and levers and measurement, you start craving the human signatures. Not the grand symbolism, but the little personal traces, names scratched in hidden spaces, marks made by crews, signs that someone stood in a corridor like this and decided to leave proof that they were here. The interior holds cool air and measured angles, but it also holds whispers of personality, and the next step in your mind is toward those quieter, almost intimate forms of evidence, graffiti, fingerprints, and the kind of casual proof that survives because nobody thought it mattered. The idea of personality surviving in a place built for permanence is the kind of thought that sticks to you because it changes what you're listening for. The pyramid stops being only stone and air. It becomes a space that held people long enough for them to leave traces without meaning to create history. Not the polished, official kind of trace, not "here lies the king" carved in gold. The casual kind. The kind you'd leave if you were tired, competent, slightly annoyed, and still proud enough to want proof that you existed in the middle of something that huge. You can feel it in the way your imagination returns to those hidden upper spaces above the king's chamber. The relieving chambers stacked like quiet buffers to protect the room below. They were never meant to impress visitors. They were meant to behave, to take pressure, to keep stone from crushing stone. That makes them perfect hiding places for truth because nobody bothered to decorate them for show. If you leave a mark up there, you aren't doing it for tourists. You're doing it because you were there and your hand had red pigment on it, and you had a moment between tasks when the wall looked blank and your name felt like it deserved to exist somewhere permanent. Those chambers are where some of the most intimate pyramid evidence lives. Rough, workmanlike markings in red ochre, quarry lines, notes, and crew names. More like the scribbles inside a tool shed than anything grand. It's strangely comforting to picture those marks because they pull the monument back down to human height. Someone climbed into a cramped space, held a lamp, and wrote something down because writing is what humans do when they want to control a world that's bigger than them. The crew names are the best part because they sound like people. Not like faceless labor, like groups with identity, like teams who needed a little swagger to get through the day. Some names carry loyalty to the king. Some carry jokes. Some carry that tough pride you get from being good at something hard. You don't haul stone for years without developing a sense of "we are the ones who can do this." Those names are the ancient equivalent of a hard hat sticker, except the sticker ended up inside one of the most famous structures on Earth. And yes, there's a gentle satisfaction in how inconvenient these marks are for any story that claims the pyramids were built by mysterious outsiders. Outsiders don't usually bother leaving internal crew notes in hidden chambers using everyday work pigment. Outsiders, in most fantasy versions, prefer glowing crystals and ominous silence. Real humans prefer labeling things. Even the pigment itself has a calming simplicity. Red ochre isn't exotic. It's earth. It's iron-rich mineral ground into powder and mixed with something to make it stick. It's the kind of color you can carry on your fingers all day without thinking about it. A worker could use it to mark a block, to guide placement, to keep track of a series, then later smear the same red on a wall to write down a team name. The color becomes a quiet thread connecting logistics to identity. If you imagine the build site again, this detail fits perfectly. Blocks arriving, staged, dressed, set. People marking which stone belongs where, or which crew handled which batch, or which face the block should present outward. Practical marks. Temporary instructions. The kind of writing that matters only until the stone is in place. Except some marks survive because they ended up in spaces that were sealed away, protected from weather, hidden from later reuse. The pyramid accidentally became a time capsule. The most soothing part is how small these marks can be compared to the scale of the stone around them. A few strokes of pigment on a wall, inside a chamber, above a chamber, inside a mountain of limestone. The pyramid doesn't erase the mark by being larger. It simply holds it, like a massive hand holding a tiny note. And the notes aren't only names. They can look like measurement guides, quarry marks, lines used to align blocks, symbols that made sense to the people doing the work. Not every mark is meant to be read as a sentence. Some are meant to be read as a task. That's another quiet reminder of how the pyramid was built. Not as one mystical act, but as a chain of jobs, each job needing clarity. If your mind drifts toward the discovery side of the story, how modern people encountered these hidden marks, it adds another layer of gentle fascination. There's something almost surreal about the idea of explorers forcing open spaces that have been sealed for thousands of years, then finding human scribbles inside, like opening a locked room in an ancient house and discovering that someone left their name on the wall before they moved out. You can picture the moment. Lamplight flickering, dust in the air, stone surfaces emerging from darkness, and then red marks, still visible, still casual, still stubbornly human. That stubborn humanity shows up elsewhere too, not only in hidden chambers. At Giza, evidence of worker life, housing areas, storage, food remains creates a wider human map. But the interior marks hit differently because they're so personal. A settlement can tell you people lived and worked here. A crew name written in a sealed space tells you someone wanted to be remembered by someone, even if that someone was just themselves. You might feel your attention shifting to another kind of trace: fingerprints. It sounds almost too intimate for a monument this famous, but it makes sense. When you work with wet materials, mortar, plaster, pigments, your fingers leave evidence whether you care or not. Mortar used between blocks can hold the faint memory of a thumb pressed into it, a quick smear from someone smoothing a seam. Plaster can preserve a touch, like a fossil preserve a footprint. You don't need to imagine a perfect fingerprint like a crime scene. Think simpler, the soft, rounded disturbance of human contact embedded in a substance that hardened and stayed. The idea that your handprint could survive for thousands of years is calming in a weird way. It makes time feel less hostile. It suggests that some parts of you, small, accidental parts, can outlast the worry you feel tonight. Even tool marks have that effect. Stone dressing leaves a specific texture, a rhythm of strikes and scrapes that reflects how a worker held a tool and what kind of force they used. One person's style can be slightly different from another's. A certain steadiness, a certain angle, a certain impatience. It's not enough to build a personality profile, but it's enough to remind you that this monument is the sum of individual habits repeated across years. Then there's graffiti in the wider sense, the urge humans have to write on things that feel important. People have scratched names on ruins in later centuries, and that's the less charming side of the story, the part where you want to gently scold someone across time for treating heritage like a bathroom stall. But the internal builder marks are different. They're not vandalism. They're work culture. They're evidence of organization and identity. They're what you get when people are allowed to be a little human inside a system that otherwise asks them to behave like parts of a machine. And if you think about it, that human outlet might have mattered. Pride is fuel. Humor is fuel. Belonging is fuel. A crew name painted in red is a small thing, but small things keep morale from collapsing under repetitive effort. It's the same reason modern crews name their group chats and slap decals on gear. You can't pull heavy things for months without becoming a little tribal about it. There's also a quiet thrill in the idea that these marks support something bigger: attribution. For a long time, people argued about which king the Great Pyramid belonged to, because monuments can outlive their paperwork. But internal marks that reference the royal name, crew names linked to that reign, logistics documents from the broader period. Together, they create a firm historical anchor. Not because one piece of evidence is perfect, but because the pattern is consistent. The pyramid isn't a floating mystery anymore. It sits in a specific time, attached to real administration, real labor, real decisions. That's the kind of certainty that feels restful because it replaces anxious speculation with grounded story. You can still enjoy mystery without drowning in it. Still, the pyramid doesn't surrender all mystery. Even the marks that feel like proof can raise new questions. Why these words, not others? Why here? Did the crews compete? Did they take pride in speed or precision? Did they joke about supervisors? Did someone sneak a mark where they weren't supposed to, just to see if they could? You can sit with these questions without answering them, because the questions themselves are gentle. They're about people, not monsters. They're about work culture, not danger. And you can imagine little scenes that are completely plausible and completely unknowable. A worker climbs into a relieving chamber with a lamp and a pot of pigment. It's cramped, dusty, and hot even at night because the stone holds warmth in its own stubborn way. He's there because the team is checking something: alignment, block placement, pressure behavior. The job finishes. There's a pause. Someone says something sarcastic about how the pyramid will still be here long after everyone arguing today is gone. Someone laughs. Then, as they're turning to leave, a hand reaches out and paints a few quick characters on the wall. Crew name, royal reference, a mark that says, "We did this." No speech, no fanfare, just a quick, human statement before the darkness swallows the space again. That imagined moment lands softly because it feels familiar. Humans always want to leave a mark. Sometimes they do it with monuments. Sometimes they do it with a few strokes of pigment on a wall no one was supposed to see again. Even outside the pyramid, on stones that were moved, dressed, and set, there were likely markings that never survived the full journey of time. Construction sites are full of temporary writing. The miracle is that any of it endured. The pyramid didn't only preserve royal ambition, it preserved workday residue. And that residue changes how you feel about the monument scale. Scale can be alienating. It can make you feel small in a way that's uncomfortable. But when scale is paired with a thumb smear in mortar, a painted crew name, a tool texture, it becomes more welcoming. The pyramid isn't only larger than you. It's also built from gestures you understand. Writing, marking, checking, correcting, joking, getting through the day. That's why these small traces are some of the most relaxing facts to hold when you're trying to sleep. They don't demand awe. They invite companionship across time. They make the ancient world feel less like a distant stage and more like a place where people had tired hands and ordinary thoughts. Your attention drifts back toward the exterior again, and you can almost sense the pyramid wearing its original smooth casing in your mind. Bright limestone skin, edges crisp, light sliding cleanly down the faces. And that sparks a different kind of longing. If the outer skin once gleamed and fit so tightly, what happened to it? How did a monument that may have looked almost polished become the stepped, rugged giant you see now? The answer isn't a single dramatic event. It's something slower, more human, more inevitable. Time, weather, reuse, and the way later generations treat old stone as a convenient quarry. The missing casing becomes the next quiet mystery waiting in the dark. That missing outer skin starts to feel almost personal, like you've met someone charismatic and then discovered their old photos where they look even more impossibly polished. And you're left thinking, wait, so you used to glow like that all the time? Because the pyramids you see today are not the pyramids as they were first experienced. What you're looking at now is the core, the muscle, the sturdy interior that did the heavy lifting. The original look was cleaner, brighter, and honestly a little unfair to the human eye. Imagine the Great Pyramid wearing a casing of fine white limestone, carefully cut, dressed, and fitted so tightly that the surface read as smooth instead of stepped. Not smooth enough from a distance. Smooth enough that moonlight could slide down it without catching on edges, as if the pyramid was a single carved mountain rather than millions of separate decisions. That casing limestone came from high-quality quarries, the kind of stone that could be cut to a clean face and polished to a subtle sheen. The builders didn't settle for it stands up. They went for, it looks like it was always meant to be there. The outer layer was the finished voice of the monument, the part meant to speak to the horizon. Hold the image of the pyramid at dawn in its original skin. The sun clears the edge of the world. The first light hits that white surface, and the whole structure shifts from shadow to brightness like a slow reveal. People on the Nile floodplain would have seen it from far away. A pale geometric mountain catching light, steady and sharp, dominating the skyline without needing to move. At certain angles, it may have been blinding, not in a dramatic sci-fi way, just in the simple way polished pale stone can throw sunlight back at you, reminding you that the desert has no patience for subtlety. Moonlight would have been different, calmer. The surface would have looked like a quiet glow rather than a harsh glare. If you've ever seen pale stone under a full moon, you know the effect. It doesn't scream, it hums. And the pyramid's edges, so clean in that casing, would have sliced the night into tidy triangles, a shape so confident it almost feels like it's correcting the horizon. Your mind can't help checking the current reality against that older image. Today, the Great Pyramid looks like a stepped giant, each course visible, the texture rougher, the face less uniform. It's still majestic, but it's a different kind of majesty, more raw, more exposed, like the monument is wearing its work clothes instead of its ceremonial robe. That's the simplest way to understand the missing casing. It was the robe. And you can still see a hint of it on Khafre's pyramid, where some casing stones remain near the top. In the right light, it looks like the pyramid is wearing a small cap of its original finish, a reminder that the smooth skin isn't a fantasy. It existed. It clung on in places where it was harder to steal, harder to reach, harder to treat as convenient building material later. The remaining casing is like a last patch of snow on a mountain peak, proof of what the whole thing once looked like. Down at ground level, the absence feels even more dramatic. With the casing gone, you can see the core blocks that were never meant to be the final surface. They're larger, rougher, more irregular in presentation because their job was structural, not aesthetic. The casing stones were the tailored suit. The core is the sturdy frame that didn't care about tailoring as long as it carried weight. And here's the calming truth that slips under the mystery. The casing didn't vanish because it was weak. It vanished because it was valuable. Stone that's already cut, already transported, already dressed to a clean face. Stone like that is basically a gift to anyone building later. If you're putting up structures in a growing city and you need high-quality building material, the temptation is obvious. The pyramids were the most visible quarry imaginable, sitting there with ready-made, high-grade limestone cladding. A later builder doesn't have to start from scratch. They can reuse. Humans love reusing when it saves effort. It's one of our most consistent traits, right next to complaining. So the casing stones, over time, became resources. Some were likely loosened by natural events, including earthquakes that rattled the region and shook fitted stones out of their perfect alignment. Once a few pieces shift or fall, the surface becomes easier to peel. Edges and seams that were once sealed tight can start offering leverage. What begins as a rare, missing stone becomes a pattern, and the pattern becomes a habit, and the habit becomes a kind of slow stripping. You can picture it happening in stages rather than one dramatic afternoon. A casing block cracks or slips. Someone notices. Someone pries it free. Someone realizes it's better stone than what they can easily quarry today. Then it's hauled away, not up a ramp toward the sky like in the old days, but down toward new buildings, new walls, new projects that don't care where the stone came from as long as it fits. It's oddly soothing to accept that the pyramids were never frozen in time, even if they feel like they should be. They were part of a landscape that kept living. Cities grew. People needed material. The pyramids, for all their authority, were also just there. You can build a monument to eternity, but you can't stop future humans from having errands. There's gentle sarcasm in how predictable the whole thing is. A civilization builds a glowing mountain of perfect limestone to honor permanence, and later generations look at it and think that's a lot of good stone just sitting there, doing nothing. It's the ancient version of someone inheriting a vintage wooden table and saying, "This would make great firewood." And yes, it's horrifying and also completely believable, which is the worst combination. The casing stones weren't only stolen. Time and weather had their share too. Wind-driven sand is a patient abrasive. It doesn't take a chunk out like a hammer. It wears. It polishes. It rounds edges. Over long stretches of time, it can soften surfaces and widen weaknesses. Combine that slow abrasion with temperature changes, occasional moisture, and the subtle stresses inside a massive structure, and you get a monument that stays standing but gradually changes its skin. The loss of casing changes the pyramid's relationship to light. With the smooth outer surface, light would have moved cleanly, the pyramid behaving like a single plane. Without it, light breaks across the steps, catches on edges, makes shadows more textured. The pyramid becomes visually louder in a way. More detail, more contrast, more stoneness. It's still beautiful, but the beauty shifts from polished elegance to rugged presence. Your mind returns to those tiny human traces, the red ochre or crew, names hidden above chambers, the imagined thumb marks in mortar, and the casing loss starts to feel like another kind of trace, just at a different scale. It's evidence of what humans do to the past. We preserve, we reuse, we misunderstand, we admire, we take, we leave behind scraps that later people turn into clues. Even the idea of a pyramidion, the capstone that may have once crowned the pyramid, adds to the feeling. If the pyramid had a final top piece, possibly covered in a bright material or even gilded, the structure might have ended in a small point of intense light, like a controlled spark at the summit. It's a powerful mental image, a white mountain of stone topped by a brighter crown, catching sunrise first, holding it for a moment, then releasing it down the faces. The thought is both magnificent and quiet, which is exactly the pyramid style. Whether that crown survives is another story, and its uncertainty fits the pyramid's habit of refusing neat endings. What remains is the main idea. The pyramid was finished to be seen as smooth, bright, and commanding, and the version you see now is the version after centuries of peeling. That peeling teaches you something surprisingly calming about time. Time doesn't always destroy by collapsing. Sometimes it edits. It removes layers. It changes the surface while leaving the core intact. The pyramids are edited monuments. They've been revised by nature, by reused, by accidents, by human choices. And still they stand, still keeping their geometry, still owning the horizon. The core truth remained even as the outfit changed. You can almost sense the casing stones as ghosts in the air around the pyramid. Not in a spooky way, more like an architectural memory. When you look at the step courses, you can mentally overlay the smooth skin, the way you can imagine a building before renovations. Your brain fills in the missing surface because the shape invites completion. The edges still point to a finished plane. The angle still suggests a smooth descent. The steps are like the understructure of a roof with the shingles removed. At the base, the missing casing changes how you read the monument's contact with the ground. The original casing would have created a cleaner meeting line between pyramid and plateau, a sharp base that made the structure feel like it grew from the earth with deliberate crispness. Without it, the base feels more rugged, more like you're seeing behind the curtain. It's a reminder that the pyramids were both architectural and geological events, human work layered onto ancient limestone. And because the casing stones were so precisely fitted, their loss makes you appreciate the precision even more. You don't fit stones that tightly unless you understand alignment and finishing at high level. You don't produce that many carefully dressed exterior blocks without a production system that can repeat quality. The missing skin is proof of excellence, because only excellent skin is worth stealing for centuries afterward. It also shifts the emotional temperature of the monument. A fully cased pyramid would have looked almost untouchable, like a divine object. The exposed core looks more accessible, more honest, more like something humans actually built. It's the difference between a polished statue and a weathered cliff. The cliff feels closer, even when it's massive, because it carries texture your senses can relate to. You stand there in the cool night again, seeing the pyramid as it is and as it was, and the gap between those two images becomes its own kind of mystery. Not a mystery of aliens or impossible machines. A mystery of human time, of how a civilization can build something dazzling, and later civilizations can dismantle parts of it without fully understanding what they're dismantling, and the monument still absorbs that loss and remains itself. The plateau wind keeps moving. The stone keeps holding its temperature. The pyramid keeps keeping its shape. And your curiosity keeps shifting gently toward the next kind of soundless presence here. The way the desert and the open space around the pyramids changes what you hear, the way silence itself behaves when it has nothing tall to interrupt it except 3 gigantic triangles. The wind keeps moving, and once you notice it, you realize the pyramids aren't only shapes for the eyes. They're shapes for the ears. The plateau is so open that sound doesn't have many places to hide, and the pyramids are so massive that even silence seems to lean against them. Out here, distance does something strange to noise. Cairo is a living, restless organism. Yet from this height and this space, it becomes a low glow and a faint, steady hush. More like the memory of traffic than traffic itself. The city's sound arrives softened, filtered by miles of air and the gentle arrogance of the desert, which has never cared what humans are up to after dark. That reduction is calming all by itself. It's like someone turned the volume down on the modern world and forgot to turn it back up. Desert air has its own acoustic personality. It's dry, and dryness changes how sound behaves. Moist air can carry certain frequencies differently than dry air, and a desert night often feels like it has fewer soft surfaces to swallow sound. There's no thick forest canopy to muffle, no wet grass to absorb, mostly stone, sand, and open space. That means little noises feel crisp when they're close. Your shoe scuff, a breath, a quiet cough, while far noises dissolve into a bland, sleepy blur. Sand is a quiet absorber. It doesn't bounce sound the way stone does. High frequencies die faster in it. It's one reason a desert can feel so silent even when there's wind. The wind has all this space, but the sand doesn't echo it back. It takes the edge off. It turns sharp noise into something duller, less demanding. And your brain, grateful for anything that reduces sharpness, settles into that dullness like it's been waiting for it. Stone behaves differently. The pyramid faces, even exposed and stepped without their original smooth casing, still reflects sound in a way sand refuses to. You can stand near a big limestone surface and feel the difference in how your voice returns to you, slightly altered, slightly delayed, like the air is politely repeating what you said to make sure you meant it. A whisper near stone doesn't vanish the same way it does out in open sand. It lingers a fraction longer. It gains a faint edge, not enough to be spooky, just enough to remind you that surfaces shape the world. And that's the first relaxing lesson of pyramid acoustics. Scale changes silence. In a small room, silence is delicate. It's easily broken. In a huge, open plateau, silence becomes durable. It's the default state, and noise has to work hard to interrupt it. Your mind notices that durability and begins to treat it like permission. Permission to stop scanning for incoming messages, incoming demands, incoming urgency. The plateau doesn't reward urgency. It rewards stillness. The wind slips along the pyramid edges and changes tone, as if the air itself is learning geometry. Edges create turbulence. Corners bend flow. Massive surfaces guide currents upward and around. Even without trying to romanticize it, you can hear how the pyramids sculpt the wind. There's the broader hiss moving across sand, then a slightly higher note as air threads between blocks, then a lower, steadier push as it meets a flat plane and rolls along it. On some nights, the wind seems to test every angle like it's curious, trying to find the one that makes the cleanest sound. That sound isn't constant. It swells and fades, because wind is never a perfectly stable machine. It comes in breaths. It eases. It returns. The pattern is irregular, but not chaotic, more like the slow, unplanned rhythm of someone sleeping nearby. That's why it's so easy to listen to. Your brain can't predict it exactly, so it doesn't get bored, but it also doesn't feel threatened by it because the changes are gentle. It's variety without surprise. If you step closer to the pyramid, your footsteps change the acoustic world again. The crunch of grit becomes more pronounced near stone. The tiny rasp of sand against your shoe becomes clearer because the nearby surfaces reflect it back. And when you stop walking, the silence feels deeper than it did a few steps away, as if the pyramid is absorbing not sound, but your movement itself. The moment you stop, the plateau returns to its default. Wind, distant hum, and the faintest suggestion of history. History has a sound here, even if it's not literal. It's the sound of imagining how this place once operated when it wasn't a nighttime monument, but an active worksite. You can almost overlay the old noise onto the current quiet. Ropes tightening, sledges scraping, voices calling pace, a foreman's shout bouncing off stone, the clack of tools against limestone. Those noises would have traveled differently depending on where you stood. Near sand, they'd be swallowed faster. Near stone, they'd return in echoes, multiplying effort into a larger presence. You can picture how crews might have used sound to coordinate without needing to see each other. A call from one team, answered by another. A rhythm established by voice, like a human metronome. Pull on a count. Rest on a count. Move as one, because moving as one keeps the load under control. It's the same principle as wetting sand to reduce friction. Small tricks that turn impossible work into manageable repetition. Sound would have been another tool, free, immediate, and surprisingly effective. Even in the worker settlement you imagined earlier, the bread, the beer, the warm talk at the end of a shift, sound would have formed the comfort. The crackle of fire, the scrape of a bowl, the low murmur of conversation that doesn't need to be loud because everyone is close and everyone is tired. That human sound would have felt safe compared to the open desert's emptiness. People cluster because noise is reassurance. Silence is beautiful, but it can also feel like exposure. The pyramids offer a third option, a huge silence that doesn't feel empty because it's filled with presence. The plateau at night also plays a subtle trick with temperature, and temperature plays a subtle trick with sound. When the ground cools faster than the air above it, layers form, and those layers can bend sound in ways that make distant noises seem nearer or farther than they should. Some nights, a far sound carries unusually well. Other nights, it disappears as if swallowed. The plateau doesn't guarantee consistent acoustics. It offers mood acoustics. And that unpredictability, again, is soothing because it keeps your attention engaged without forcing it. Sometimes you'll hear a single sound, maybe a distant vehicle, maybe a call, maybe the faint clink of metal. And because everything else is quiet, that one sound becomes a little dramatic. Not scary dramatic, just noticeable. It reminds you how much your brain usually lives in a constant audio stew without realizing it. Here, sound is sparse. Each noise is an event. And when the event passes, the silence feels even more complete. It's like the plateau keeps resetting the audio landscape back to calm. The pyramids themselves have that same resetting quality. They've been edited by time, the missing casing stones, the exposed core, the rougher surface. Yet they still hold the quiet. The loss didn't make them less powerful. It made them more textured, and texture changes how wind and sound play across them. Where a smooth casing might have produced cleaner airflow and fewer tiny eddies, the step courses and block edges create microcurrents, each one a small whisper in the larger breath of the night. If you want to indulge a mental experiment, imagine the Great Pyramid in its original smooth skin under wind. The sound will be different, cleaner, less broken up. The wind would slide across like water across a polished surface, producing fewer little rattles and more of a steady, low shush. Today's pyramid, with its exposed courses, offers more grip for sound, more places for the air to catch and flick and release. The monument becomes not only a visual sculpture, but an acoustic one. There's also the strange intimacy of speaking near a giant ancient wall. If you say a few words quietly, you can feel the stone receiving them. That's not mystical. It's the simple fact that a large surface near you changes the way your voice disperses. The sound doesn't scatter into open space as quickly. It returns to you, slightly warmer, slightly more present. It's like talking in a corridor versus talking on a beach. The beach steals your voice. The corridor keeps it close. And that can feel oddly comforting when you're tired. Your voice, metaphorically, doesn't disappear. It comes back. The pyramid gives it back, not because it cares, but because it's there. Silence around a monument this old also triggers a different kind of listening. You start hearing your own body more clearly. The small creak in your knee when you shift weight. The soft click of your tongue against your teeth when you swallow. The rhythm of your breath. It's not that the pyramid makes these sounds. It simply removes enough noise that you can't avoid them. And once you notice them, they become another steady rhythm, another reminder that you're safe, present, and still. That still matters. The pyramids are the largest still things most people ever stand near. Mountains are larger, but mountains feel like nature's choice. The pyramids feel like a human choice, so bold it became landscape. Standing near them in quiet, you begin to feel the difference between motion and permanence. The modern world is motion, scrolling, updating, refreshing. The pyramids are permanence, unupdated, unrefreshed, stubbornly the same idea day after day. Even the Sphinx nearby participates in the soundscape, though in a subtler way. Its form breaks wind close to the ground, creating small shifts in airflow and thus in sound. On calm nights, it feels like the plateau is listening. On windy nights, it feels like the plateau is speaking. Either way, the effect is that your mind has something gentle to ride, a current that doesn't require effort. You might think about the desert itself as an acoustic instrument. Dunes in some places can sing when sand slides in a certain way, deep, resonant tones created by grains moving together. It's not a pyramid fact directly, but it belongs to the same world, sand behaving like a choir when conditions are right. The desert, like the pyramid builders, can produce grandeur using simple materials if the rhythm is correct. And the idea that even sand can create music if it moves in harmony is a surprisingly fitting companion to a monument created by human harmony. Crews pulling on a count, levers creaking in unison, progress measured in repeated, coordinated effort. The plateau's openness also changes how you perceive time. When there's little sound, minutes stretch. When minutes stretch, your body stops rushing you toward the next thing. You realize that your most exhausting habits are often audio-driven. Constant notifications, constant voices, constant demands. Here, even the air seems to have fewer opinions. It moves, it sighs, it quiets, it returns. That's it. And because the pyramids are so visually commanding, the quiet doesn't feel lonely. It feels curated, like the world decided to give you a stage and then remove the audience so you could breathe. The fact that these structures were once surrounded by the busy sounds of construction makes the current quiet feel even deeper. The plateau held shouting and scraping in daily labor for years, then slowly let it fade into centuries of wind. That transformation, noise into silence, is one of the most relaxing narratives the pyramids offer. It suggests that even the loudest efforts eventually settle into calm, that the world, over time, tends to smooth itself, the way sand smooths a footprint if you leave it alone long enough. And that thought nudges your curiosity forward again. Because once you accept that the Great Pyramid represents mastery, mastery of logistics, mastery of geometry, mastery of soundless endurance, you start wanting to see the learning that came before the mastery. Nobody begins with perfection. There were earlier pyramids that experimented, adjusted, admitted mistakes in stone, and tried again with better angles and better confidence. The grandeur of Giza becomes even more impressive when you remember it was earned. The learning before mastery is one of the most comforting parts of the pyramid story, because it proves the ancient world wasn't built by a single burst of genius. It was built the same way anything solid gets built. Try, notice what fails, adjust, try again, then pretend it was always the plan once it finally works. You can feel that whole process hiding in the silhouette of Giza. The Great Pyramid looks so confident that it tricks you into thinking it arrived fully formed, like an idea that never had a sweat. But the true story has earlier chapters written in stone, and those chapters are full of experiments that are almost endearing in their honesty. Earlier pyramids are basically prototypes you can still stand in front of. They're the archaeological version of drafts. The first big step in this learning arc begins with a shape that feels like the pyramid's awkward adolescent phase, the step pyramid. Instead of smooth faces, you get stacked levels, like a giant stone staircase rising toward the sky. It's not wrong. It's a different solution. It's the idea of height achieved through layers that remain visible, each one a platform, each one an admission that the builders were still figuring out how to turn a mound into a clean geometric statement. That step form is deeply soothing to imagine because it's so obviously constructed. You can see the logic. One layer becomes a base. Another layer sits on top. Repeat until it becomes tall enough to feel monumental. The shape looks like it's thinking out loud. And that's what it was, a civilization testing how far it could push stone before stone pushed back. Even before true pyramids, there were earlier royal tombs. Mastabas, flat-topped, rectangular structures that sat low to the ground like quiet blocks. The step pyramid was an escalation of that idea. Stack mastaba-like layers, and you get height without needing a smooth face yet. It's a transition, and transitions are always where the most interesting mistakes live. Then comes the period that feels like a workshop with a very ambitious manager. The reign of a king who seems to have been obsessed with getting the pyramid formula exactly right. If you want to picture a ruler who kept saying, "We can do better," until his builders could probably recite slope ratios in their sleep, you're thinking of Sneferu. His era produced major pyramid projects that feel like steps in a learning curve, each one teaching a lesson that Giza later uses with calm confidence. One of the earliest in this sequence is the Mihdam Pyramid, and it's the kind of monument that makes your stomach tighten slightly, not from fear, but from recognizing the universal pain of structural failure. Mihdam looks like a pyramid that partially gave up. Its outer layers collapsed, leaving a tower-like core and a massive pile of debris around it, like the structure sighed and said, "I was not ready for this angle." The collapse isn't a moral story. It's engineering reality. If the foundation, design, or casing strategy isn't right, gravity will eventually collect its payment. It's oddly calming to let that be true. Failure happens, even in monumental projects. What matters is what you learn from it. The Mihdam situation likely taught hard lessons about stability, casing, and how a pyramid's outer layers interact with its core. Smooth faces create different stresses than stepped layers. The interface between core and casing becomes critical. The angle matters. The way weight transfers matters. You can almost feel the builders absorbing these lessons, not through theoretical math in a classroom, but through stone cracking, edges shifting, and a project that didn't age as intended. Harsh feedback, but effective. Then there's the Bent Pyramid at Dahshur, which is one of the most visually fascinating monuments in Egypt because it wears its correction in plain sight. The lower portion rises at one angle. Then partway up the builders change the slope to a shallower angle, creating a distinct bend in the silhouette. It's a pyramid with a visible mid-course adjustment, and it's impossible not to find that comforting. It's the ancient world admitting, without words, that someone looked at the structure rising and thought, this is getting risky. We need to change the plan before gravity humiliates us. Think about that moment. A pyramid is already enormous. Resources are already invested. Labor has already been spent. And yet someone has the clarity and the authority to adjust. That takes courage and competence. It's the opposite of stubbornness. It's intelligence responding to evidence. The bent pyramid feels like a freeze frame of that intelligence. The lower angle might have been too steep, increasing the risk of structural issues. Cracks may have appeared. Stress patterns may have looked wrong. The solution wasn't to abandon the project entirely. It was to ease the angle, reduce the load pressure on the lower masonry, and guide the weight more safely down into the base. The result is a pyramid that looks unusual, yes, but also a pyramid that still stands. The correction worked. That's a quietly thrilling message when you're trying to relax. It says that perfection isn't always the goal. Stability is. It says you can change course and still succeed. It says large things can survive because someone was willing to adjust early enough. Then comes the red pyramid, also at Dashur, which often feels like the moment the builders finally solved the smooth-sided pyramid equation in a way that could be repeated with confidence. Its sides rise at a consistent, gentler slope, less daring than the bent pyramid's initial steepness, more disciplined, more assured. The stone has a reddish hue, which gives it warmth in certain light, like the desert is lending it color. The red pyramid is soothing because it feels resolved. It looks like a design that knows what it is. Not a prototype, not a correction, a finished method. It's the kind of structure that makes you think, okay, they figured out the recipe here. And once the recipe exists, Giza becomes less like an impossible miracle and more like the next step. Take the proven method, scale it up, refine it further, push precision harder, and place it on the most symbolic landscape stage available. You can imagine the confidence that must have grown across these projects. Each build teaches crews. Each build trains surveyors. Each build refines stone dressing techniques. Each build improves logistics, quarrying, transport, ramp systems, labor rotations, food supply. The workforce becomes experienced at monument building in the same way any workforce becomes experienced at specialized craft. People learn shortcuts, they're safe. They learn which mistakes are expensive. They learn which tools last. They learn how to maintain ramps, how to coordinate poles, how to set blocks efficiently without damaging edges. That experience is the hidden foundation of Giza's grandeur. The Great Pyramid is not the first time. It's also worth holding how each pyramid feels like a different personality, even when the purpose is similar. The Step Pyramid feels like ambition discovering itself. Midam feels like a warning. The Bent Pyramid feels like wisdom arriving mid-project. The Red Pyramid feels like calm competence. Then Giza feels like the moment competence becomes spectacle. Your brain enjoys narratives like that because they move forward. They build suspense without anxiety. You're watching a civilization learn. And learning is one of the most soothing human activities when you're not being graded on it. And this learning wasn't only about angles. It was about material choices. Limestone for core and casing. Granite for interior structural demands. Mortar strategies. Weight distribution through relieving spaces. The builders refined how they handled corners, how they kept courses level, how they maintained alignment over years. Every pyramid project would have increased institutional knowledge. Even if individual workers changed, the system improved. Egypt wasn't just building pyramids, it was building pyramid building. The improvement shows in a way later pyramids feel more coherent, more integrated with their complex elements. Mortuary temples, causeways, subsidiary pyramids. Those features aren't random decorations. They are part of a broader funerary landscape that developed and standardized over time. The pyramid becomes the headline, but the full composition includes processional routes and ritual spaces designed to manage movement and meaning. Earlier pyramids helped refine those relationships too, where the temple sits, how the causeway aligns, how the complex interacts with the landscape and the sun. When you return mentally to Giza, you can appreciate how much confidence is packed into its choices. The plateau selection, the near-cardinal alignment, the slope decisions, the internal corridors and chambers, the casing fit, the scale. You can almost hear the builders of Giza benefiting from every earlier mistake. We tried that. It cracked. We used that angle. It stressed the base. We learned how to stabilize the casing. We learned how to distribute weight over key chambers. The Great Pyramid is a monument built on lessons you can still see elsewhere, like an exam written in stone with the answers learned the hard way. There's a very quiet, very human comfort in this. Perfection often comes after practice, not before it. The pyramids are proof that even the most iconic achievements can be the result of iterative improvement. That's a surprisingly gentle thought to carry into sleep. It tells you the world doesn't require you to be instantly excellent. It suggests that steady refinement can produce something astonishing. And the story continues beyond Giza too, because later periods built different kinds of pyramids, with different materials and different success levels. Some later pyramids used more mud brick and smaller stone, and many didn't age as well. That contrast makes Giza feel even more special, not because later builders were less intelligent, but because conditions changed: economics, political stability, resource priorities. The Giza era sits at a particular high point of centralized power and resource concentration, a moment when a state could marshal what it needed to build on that scale with that precision. So when you feel on near the Great Pyramid, you're also feeling the echo of a unique historical moment, one where experience, resources, and ambition aligned. And that pulls your curiosity toward another subtle layer of mystery. If earlier pyramids taught engineering lessons, they also taught lessons about communication, how plans were shared, how teams coordinated, how a nation's knowledge traveled between sites. The pyramids aren't only stone and sky. They are information systems, standards, measurements, instructions, and records that had to be maintained over years without losing consistency. In a place where a slight drift in angle could become a lifelong architectural confession, information mattered as much as rope. Which means the next quiet wonder isn't only how pyramids were built, but how the builders' minds stayed synchronized, how they kept the same rules alive across seasons, across thousands of hands, across a project so long that it could outlast the attention span of anyone who started it. That idea of thousands of minds staying synchronized for years is where the pyramids start feeling less like architecture and more like a living operating system. Stone is the visible output, but information is the invisible structure that made the stone behave. You can almost feel it like a second pyramid layered over the first, made of rules, measurements, schedules, and records, quietly rising in parallel, always slightly ahead of the next block. If you've ever tried to get 5 people to agree on where to eat dinner, the Great Pyramid should make you a little uneasy in the best way. Because this was not 5 people. This was a nation-scale project stretched over seasons, with crews rotating, materials arriving on water schedule, ramps shifting as the structure climbed, and precision requirements that didn't care if anyone was having an off week. The first ingredient in that synchronization is a shared language of measurement. Not just words, but numbers that actually mean the same thing in every hand. A measuring unit has to be stable enough that it doesn't drift with mood. A cubit can't become longer when someone's excited and shorter when someone's tired. So you imagine the measuring rods, physical standards, kept like trusted tools, checked and rechecked, copied carefully. Standards feel boring until you realize standards are how reality stays consistent across time. Your mind can rest in that consistency. Someone, somewhere, was responsible for keeping the measurements honest. Someone guarded the reference rod the way you guard a password you can't afford to forget. And once the standards exist, they become the quiet dictator of the project. The rod says what's true, and everyone else aligns their work to it. That's how you get corners that behave. That's how you get courses that don't slowly wander. That's how you keep a slope constant enough that the pyramid looks inevitable rather than improvised. Then come the marks. You've already seen them in your imagination. Red ochre notes, crew names, quick guidance scribbled where only other workers would ever see it. Those marks aren't just personality. They're interface. They're the ancient version of labeling cables, so the next person doesn't spend an hour guessing what goes where. A block needs orientation. A series needs order. A delivery needs confirmation. The pyramid is a giant puzzle where pieces weigh more than most of your daily problems combined. And the only way that puzzle stays solvable is if information travels cleanly alongside materials. You don't want a team hauling the wrong block to the wrong level. You don't want a shipment arriving with no one ready to receive it. You don't want crews waiting around because the ramp isn't repaired yet. Waiting is the enemy of momentum. And momentum is the only thing that makes a project of this scale feel normal. So the plateau must have had its own quiet paperwork culture. Not paperwork like modern forms you fill out to satisfy a system that doesn't trust you, but records that exist because they make work smoother. Grain in, bread out. Beer brewed, beer distributed. Tools issued, tools returned. Stone shipped, stone arrived. Crew assigned, crew rotated. 100 small confirmations that keep a giant machine from seizing up. You can picture the scribes moving through this world like calm spiders in a web. Always checking, always counting, always making sure the numbers match the physical reality. Their tools are simple: ink, reed pens, writing surfaces. Their job is not simple. Keep a complex build coherent for years. That's the kind of pressure that doesn't look dramatic from a distance, but would absolutely keep a person awake if they weren't built for it. And because you're listening for the human scale, you can almost hear the scribe's particular kind of sigh. The sigh that says, yes, I understand the ramp needs repairs, but I also need to know exactly how many workers are being diverted to do that, because if I don't know, tomorrow's rations don't match tomorrow's bodies, and then the whole day becomes a hungry argument. Even the work crews themselves likely had structure built into their identities. Teams, sub-teams, leaders. The kind of hierarchy that exists not to crush individuality, but to reduce confusion. A foreman doesn't just shout pace, he translates plan into action. A crew leader doesn't just lead, he absorbs problems before they spread. If a rope snaps, the leader reports it. If a sledge runner is damaged, the leader gets it fixed. If a member is injured, the leader rearranges tasks. The pyramid doesn't care about your staffing problems. It only cares whether the next block shows up on schedule. This is where the whole enterprise starts to sound a little too modern for comfort. A large project, coordinated labor, specialized roles, supply chain constraints, quality control, risk management. It's almost like project management is an ancient human instinct and not a corporate invention. Sorry to anyone who thought they were the first person to discover the joy of tracking deliverables. The deliverables here were stone, and stone is brutally honest about whether you delivered. You can also feel how information would have been embedded into the physical workflow. A block doesn't move alone, it moves with a destination. That destination might be communicated through marks, through spoken instruction, through the chain of supervisors. The ramp crew needs to know when a hauling team is coming so the path is ready. The placement crew needs to know which blocks are arriving so the working surface is prepared. The dressing crew needs to know which faces must be finished more carefully. The food distribution team needs to know how many mouths will be here for the next shift. Everything depends on everything else. The pyramid is a network. The network reaches beyond Giza 2. When stone comes from distant quarries, especially granite from the south, the information load increases. Barges don't teleport. They arrive when they arrive, guided by current, weather, water level, and human timing. Someone at the quarry had to coordinate cutting and loading. Someone on the river had to manage the crew and the route. Someone near Giza had to manage the landing and unloading. Someone on the plateau had to manage the final haul to the correct staging area. The stone itself is the cargo. The schedule is the lifeline. You can imagine a supervisor on the river keeping a day-by-day account. Not poetic diary entries, but operational notes. Where the boat traveled, how many blocks moved, what the crew did. The idea that such a record could exist is comforting because it confirms the pyramid era wasn't just myth-making, it was administration. People wrote things down because writing things down prevents disasters. And the record-keeping doesn't have to be perfect to be powerful. It just needs to be consistent enough that the system can correct itself. If a shipment is delayed, the worksite shifts tasks. If a ramp segment is unstable, crews reassign labor to repair. If a batch of blocks needs extra dressing, the schedule adapts. A rigid system breaks. A flexible system survives. The pyramid is rigid in stone and flexible in organization. That flexibility is one of the reasons the result feels so confident. It isn't just raw discipline. It's discipline paired with adjustment. The same way the bent pyramid slope change shows a willingness to respond to stress rather than deny it. Information also lives in the builder's mental habits. When you do a task repeatedly, your body learns it. When thousands of bodies learn related tasks, a culture of technique forms. People share tricks, how to keep the rope from twisting, how to reduce friction, how to lift with less strain, how to position a lever so it doesn't slip. The pyramid becomes a training ground where skill spreads through imitation and practice. And once you have a culture of technique, you have quality control without needing someone to hover over every block. Workers learn what good looks like because they see it, touch it, and are corrected when it's wrong. Precision becomes not just an instruction, but a shared expectation. That expectation is what makes the geometry hold over years. The calm irony is that the pyramids, these symbols of kings, also represent the power of collective competence. A pharaoh can order a monument, but a pharaoh can't personally keep the base level or the corner straight. That's done by people who care about straightness as a daily craft. It's done by surveyors who trust plumb lines. It's done by stone dressers who understand surfaces. It's done by supervisors who can spot a drift before it becomes permanent. So the pyramid becomes a kind of social contract written in stone. Everyone agrees to respect the same rules long enough for the structure to rise. The more you sink into that, the more the monument's mystery shifts from how did they do it to how did they keep doing it. One brilliant day doesn't build a pyramid. 10,000 ordinary days do. The skill isn't just invention. It's endurance. It's showing up, repeating the process, and refusing to let standards slip when fatigue tries to negotiate. That's why it's so soothing to think about at night. Because your own mind is often exhausted by the feeling that consistency is hard. The pyramid is quiet proof that consistency can be engineered into a life. Through routine, through shared standards, through systems that make the next right action easier than the next wrong one. Even the seasonal rhythm of the Nile plays into the information system. When labor availability changes with agricultural cycles, scheduling becomes a kind of dance. Certain times of year bring more hands to the site. Other times require a leaner, more specialized crew. The plan adapts. The record-keeping adapts. The food supply adapts. The whole operation breathes with the river's calendar. And breathing is a much calmer metaphor than forcing. And because you're still standing in night air with the pyramid looming, you can feel how these systems must have been invisible to most observers even then. A visitor might see stone moving and think strength is the secret. The real secret is coordination. It always is. Coordination is what makes strength efficient. Coordination is what turns a crowd into a machine without making it feel like chaos. That invisible coordination also explains something that keeps modern people quietly obsessed: the inside spaces, the corridors, the chambers, the relieving structures, the subtle concavity of faces. None of that happens by accident. It happens because information was preserved well enough that intent could survive the handoff from one crew to another, from one season to the next. A plan existed, and the plan stayed legible. Which brings you to the most delicious kind of modern-era suspense. If the builders were this systematic, there may still be system inside the pyramid that hasn't been fully mapped. Not because it's supernatural, but because the structure is massive and complex, and time has a way of sealing away things that were never meant to be visited again. The thought doesn't need to turn into anxiety. It can stay as a soft curiosity. Hidden spaces as the byproduct of engineering, voids as pressure management, sealed corridors as intentional privacy. The pyramid as a structure that still contains unread information, not in ink, but in geometry, spaces defined by absence. And when you hold that idea, the next gentle pull is obvious. If information once flowed through this project like blood, what information is still trapped inside the stone, waiting for modern tools to listen to it without breaking it open? The pyramid has always been a monument to patience, and the newest way of exploring it is also patient, scanning, sensing, detecting emptiness where your eyes can't reach. The idea of the pyramid still holding unread information has a particular kind of nighttime charm because it flips the usual story. Most ancient places feel like they're slowly being revealed by digging down. Here, the most interesting questions are inside a mountain that's already above ground, sitting in plain sight like it's daring you to admit you don't actually know it yet. You stand close enough to feel the scale again, and it becomes obvious why guessing has limits. These stones aren't thin walls you tap and instantly understand. They're mass. Their thickness measured in meters, not inches, stacked with the stubborn confidence of something that expects to outlive your curiosity. If you try to just explore with brute force, you destroy the very thing you're trying to learn from. The pyramid forces a different kind of respect, the kind that listens before it touches. Modern exploration, at its best, has learned to listen. The most soothing part is that the tools are almost poetic in their restraint. Instead of chisels and crowbars, there are detectors, sensors, patient instruments that sit quietly, collecting whispers from physics the way ancient surveyors collected direction from stars. The vibe is eerily consistent across millennia. You don't conquer nature, you cooperate with it. The ancients used water to find level and shadows to test straightness. Today, the most elegant methods use particles that pass through stone like invisible rain. Cosmic rays are hitting the Earth all the time, whether you're thinking about them or not. High-energy particles arrive from space, slam into the atmosphere, and produce showers of secondary particles that keep moving downward. Some of those are muons, particles that can pass through substantial amounts of material. They're not magic. They're just stubborn travelers with enough energy to ignore most obstacles. And that stubbornness makes them useful because a thick region of stone blocks more muons than a hollow region does. So if you place detectors inside or around the pyramid and patiently count the muons arriving from different angles, you can build a map of density. Stone looks like more blocking. Air-filled space looks like less blocking. Over time, a picture emerges. Not a photograph, not a Hollywood scan with glowing lines, but a statistical shape, a suggestion of voids where solid stone should have been. It's one of the most calming scientific ideas you can hold. The pyramid is being gently x-rayed by the universe for free, and the only job humans have is to sit quietly enough to notice. The waiting is a feature, not a flaw. Muon data doesn't rush. You don't get answers in an afternoon. Detectors sit for weeks, months, collecting enough events to make the noise settle and the signal sharpen. The pyramid is famous for demanding patience from builders. It demands patience from explorers too. That symmetry is comforting. Like the structure has a personality, and it only speaks to people willing to match its tempo. When the data hints at a void, the feeling is less eureka and more interesting again. Because a void is not automatically a treasure room or a secret tunnel for dramatic escapes. Sometimes a void is structural, a relieving space, a gap left by construction choices. Sometimes it's a previously unknown corridor. Sometimes it's a pocket created by the way stones were arranged. The pyramid doesn't promise you a story you already want. It offers you reality, which is usually stranger and quieter. Reality also comes with humility. Even with modern sensors, interpretation is careful work. A density anomaly can suggest a cavity, but not the exact shape in crisp detail. It can suggest location, but not necessarily access. It can suggest, but not confirm, purpose. That limitation is oddly soothing because it prevents the mind from sprinting into fantasy. The unknown stays unknown until evidence earns it. And yet, evidence has earned a few fascinating surprises. The Great Pyramid has long been mapped in its main passages and chambers, but modern scanning has suggested there may be additional internal spaces that were not part of the classic tourist storyline. A big void became a headline in the modern imagination because it sounded like the pyramid had been hiding a lung of empty space. Whether you picture it as a hidden chamber, a relieving structure, or something else, the emotional effect is the same. The pyramid still contains geometry that hasn't been physically walked through. That's a beautifully restrained kind of mystery. It doesn't threaten you. It invites you. It says the story isn't finished, and it doesn't need to be finished tonight. Your mind naturally compares this to the ancient builders' own internal design choices. You already felt how relieving chambers above the king's chamber were a practical response to weight. You already sensed how narrow shafts seemed to care about direction. So an unknown void doesn't feel like a glitch. It feels like another layer of problem solving, another section of the invisible operating system that kept stone stable. Even the idea of an internal ramp, if you like that hypothesis, gains new emotional texture here. A hidden passage running within the structure would have been a clever way to move stone upward while keeping the exterior cleaner and more easily finished with casing. Whether that's true in the exact way some people imagine it, the concept fits the mindset. Hide the messy logistics inside the mountain, then present a smooth exterior to the world. It's the same reason you hide wiring behind walls. Not because wiring is shameful, but because the finished face is meant to be uninterrupted. The pyramid might have been built with the world's earliest obsession with clean aesthetics. Make the outside serene, even if the inside is complicated. That idea feels right when you remember the casing stones again. The robe, the glowing skin that once made the pyramid look like a single piece of light-catching geometry. A smooth exterior would have benefited from a construction method that didn't require massive ramps hugging the outside all the way to the top. If ramps were external, they needed to be removed, surfaces cleaned, casing placed. If ramps were partly internal, the outside could be dressed earlier or with fewer interruptions. Either way, the pyramid is not just a stack. It's a sequence of phases, each phase leaving temporary evidence that may have been erased by the next. Modern scanning is basically trying to catch those erased phases by reading what stone couldn't fully hide. There's also a delicate tension between curiosity and preservation. Once you suspect a void exists, the childish part of the brain wants to poke it immediately. The adult part understands that poking can ruin context. A tiny drilled hole can be harmless in some settings and devastating in others. So modern teams tend to move slowly, arguing, testing, validating, trying to avoid turning the pyramid into a Swiss cheese of good intentions. That debate can sound frustrating in daytime, but at night, it's reassuring. It means people have learned the right lesson from history. Don't strip the casing stones again, metaphorically. Don't take what you can take just because you can. The pyramid has already been peeled by centuries of reuse. It doesn't need modern curiosity to become another kind of quarry. So exploration becomes a gentle act. Sensors placed carefully, data collected patiently, hypotheses framed cautiously. And even when a physical inspection is attempted through a tiny probe or a camera, everything is designed to minimize harm, to keep the structure stable, to respect the fact that once you break something ancient, you can't unbreak it. You can only apologize, and stone is not easily impressed by apologies. The pyramid's silence makes that respect feel natural. It's hard to be reckless in a place that has been still for so long. The monument trains you to lower your voice and your ego. Your attention drifts to the broader plateau again, because the Great Pyramid isn't alone. Giza is a system, with other pyramids, temples, causeways, and structures that connect like parts of a carefully planned landscape. That means unknown spaces in one monument aren't isolated curiosities. They can be clues to how the whole complex functioned. A hidden corridor might align with a processional route. A void might correspond to a structural technique seen elsewhere. A previously unknown chamber might match patterns in other pyramids where certain features repeat. Pattern recognition is one of the most relaxing ways your brain can stay awake without stress. It's not alarm, it's puzzle. The pyramid becomes a calm puzzle with pieces that include everything you've already held. Wet sand under sledges, red ochre crew names, star-aligned faces, missing casing stones reused by later builders, and the quiet administration that kept standards consistent. Modern detectors are simply the newest piece, a way to sense pattern without forcing the stone to confess. And the stone does confess in its own slow way. There's a peculiar comfort in realizing that unknown doesn't necessarily mean hidden by intention. Sometimes unknown means simply not yet measured. The pyramid is enormous. It was built with internal complexities. It has endured earthquakes, stone shifts, repairs, breaches in time. Some spaces could have been sealed by design. Others could have been sealed by accident. A void could be an intentional relieving space. It could be construction leftover. It could be a route that was never finished. The pyramid doesn't label its own interior. It leaves you to infer from physics and geometry, like a detective who's only allowed to listen through walls. Listening through walls is one of the most sleep-friendly metaphors possible. It's curiosity without intrusion. It's awareness without disturbance. It's the same reason you can fall asleep hearing distant voices in another room. Your brain registers life and pattern, but you don't have to act. Muon scanning turns the pyramid into that other room. You can sense movement of particles, sense density differences, sense hidden space, without needing to step into it. You can keep your imagination gentle. A corridor that hasn't seen human breath for thousands of years, a pocket of still air held like a secret in the stone, a void that exists because the builders understood pressure the way a musician understands tension in a string. Even if nothing dramatic is ever found, the fact that the pyramid can still surprise is enough. Surprise doesn't have to be loud. It can be small, a new void, a new understanding of how stones were arranged, a better model of internal stress paths, a clearer explanation of why certain corridors exist. These are quiet achievements, and quiet achievements fit the pyramid better than treasure chest fantasies. Treasure fantasies are exhausting anyway. They make everything about greed and adrenaline. The pyramid deserves better. It's already more interesting than treasure because it's a record of competence on a scale few humans ever get to touch. Competence is the theme that keeps returning, like a lullaby chorus you don't mind hearing again. You can't build this without competence. You can't align it without competence. You can't feed the crews without competence. You can't preserve it, explore it, or even talk about it responsibly without competence. The pyramid is basically competence turned into landscape. And because competence is calming, because it signals safety, your body relaxes as your mind keeps wandering. You don't need to solve the void. You don't need to know what's inside it right now. It's enough to know the pyramid still holds depth beyond what you've seen, and that the universe itself supplies the particles that help reveal it. That thought brings you back to the night sky above the plateau, the same sky the surveyors once used as a measuring tool. Their method was slow observation. Modern scanning is slow observation too, just using a different part of the universe. Stars help them find direction. Muons help modern teams find emptiness. Same posture, same patience, different century. And that symmetry is the kind of elegant loop your brain loves right before sleep. It makes the story feel whole without ending it. It makes the pyramid feel like a bridge between ancient and modern ways of knowing. Both grounded, both careful, both unwilling to rush. The enormity remains, but it's no longer intimidating. It becomes a shelter from mystery rather than a threat. The unknown spaces inside are not dangers. They're quiet rooms sealed by time. The scans are not invasions. They're listening. The pyramid isn't being conquered. It's being understood slowly, the way you understand anything that matters. That slow understanding sets up the last, most comforting turn of the whole journey. After all the engineering, all the organization, all the cosmic alignment and modern scanning, the pyramids still keep one simple promise. They remain. They keep standing in the same wind, under the same stars, asking the same calm question with their shape. How much can the human mind build when it commits to patience? You're standing with that calm question hanging in the air. How much can a human mind build when it commits to patience? And the pyramids answer without words, because stone doesn't do speeches. Stone does presence. It does "I'm still here," in the most literal way possible. It's almost funny, in a gentle way that doesn't wake you up, that the pyramids have become everyone's favorite argument. People argue about ramps, about labor, about secret chambers, about whether the angles were chosen for symbolism or practicality, about what the shafts really point to. Meanwhile, the pyramids themselves just keep doing what they've always done, sitting under the sky, catching light, carving silence into the desert, and letting every generation project its own obsession onto them like a movie screen made of limestone. That's part of what makes them so relaxing to think about. They don't demand you agree with one perfect explanation. They let you hold multiple truths at once. They were spiritual and administrative. They were cosmic and logistical. They were engineered and ceremonial. They were built to honor a king, and they ended up honoring a whole civilization's ability to coordinate, measure, and endure. And the more you let that complexity settle, the more the pyramids stop feeling like a riddle you have to solve and start feeling like a landscape you can simply inhabit in your mind. Because you already know the bones of the story by feel. You've watched blocks quarried and nudged free with patient splitting. You've heard the scrape of sledges eased by wet sand. That small trick turning friction into cooperation. You've pictured ramps evolving as the monument rises. Not because ancient builders were indecisive, but because good builders adapt. You've stood in the grand gallery's tall hush, felt stone guiding sound into softer echoes. You've noticed the sky as a tool, stars lining up for north, shadows laying down honest lines at noon. You've seen the human fingerprints hidden where no ceremony was meant to reach. Red ochre crew names, work marks, the casual bravery of leaving proof that you were part of something bigger than your own lifespan. You've watched time edit the monument too, peeling away its bright casing stone like a robe repurposed by later hands until the core stands exposed, still stable, still geometry, still unmistakable. You've listened to modern science approach with the same posture as ancient surveying. Quiet attention, patient measurement, cosmic particles used like whispers through stone, revealing voids without forcing the pyramid to give up its secrets violently. All of those threads weave into one bigger kind of calm. The pyramids are proof that the world can be both mysterious and understandable without becoming threatening. Mystery usually makes the mind tense because it feels like a missing piece that might be dangerous. The pyramids offer a different kind of mystery, the kind that stays serene even when it remains unresolved. A void inside the stone doesn't have to mean danger. It can mean structure. It can mean planning. It can mean an unfinished idea sealed away and forgotten because the finished idea was enough. The unknown can be neutral, even beautiful. That's a thought your nervous system appreciates more than it admits. And then there's the scale, the part that usually triggers awe and sometimes anxiety. Scale can make you feel small in a way that's uncomfortable, like you're being reminded you don't matter. The pyramids do something subtler. They make you feel small, yes, but also included, because the smallness is shared. Every single person who ever stood here was small next to this. Kings were small next to this. Builders were small next to this. Modern visitors are small next to this. The pyramid doesn't single you out. It levels everyone, the way water levels a foundation trench, the way a plumb line levels a claim. That leveling is strangely kind. It says your worries aren't uniquely heavy. They're just human-sized, and human-sized things can be carried, especially when you stop insisting you must carry them alone. The builders didn't carry alone. That's the secret most people miss while chasing dramatic explanations. The miracle is not one person's strength. It's many people agreeing to move with the same rhythm. The pyramid rises because someone kept the measurements consistent, someone kept the ropes ready, someone kept the ramp packed, someone kept the food coming, someone kept the crews organized, someone kept the plan legible. Competence stacked on competence until stone became a shape that outlasts the names that ordered it. If you let your mind drift across the plateau one last time, you can feel that competence like a quiet hum under the wind. The desert is indifferent, but the human effort embedded in this place is not. It's deliberate. It's structured. It's patient. It's the kind of effort that doesn't need to be loud to be powerful. There's also a soft irony here that's worth smiling at before your eyes get too heavy. Modern people love to imagine ancient life as primitive and chaotic, and then you look at the Great Pyramid and realize it required standards, scheduling, quality control, and a supply chain that would make a modern logistics manager quietly sweat. Somewhere in the ancient world, someone was essentially doing inventory, and someone was essentially managing shifts, and someone was essentially saying, no, that block does not go there, with the same exhausted certainty you hear today when someone tries to plug the wrong cable into the wrong port. And if you need a bit of gentle sarcasm to sweeten the calm, consider that you live in a world where people can't agree on which side of the sidewalk to walk on, yet a society without modern machines managed to align a massive stone mountain to cardinal directions with astonishing precision. If that doesn't make you slightly reconsider your opinions about what humans can do when they actually commit to something, nothing will. The pyramids also carry a quieter lesson about time that's especially useful at night. They show you time is not only a thief. Time is also a curator. It removes the casing stones, yes. It softens edges, yes. It invites reuse and loss, yes. But it also preserves. It seals away a red-painted crew name and keeps it visible for thousands of years. It holds cool air inside corridors. It keeps a shape recognizable across millennia. Time can erase, and time can protect, often at the same time, depending on where you're standing. That mixed nature of time can be comforting, because it suggests your own life isn't being reduced to nothing as the years pass. Some parts of you will be edited away, sure, but some parts, habits, kindness, a skill you practice patiently, get reinforced. They become your own internal stone, the stable thing you carry from season to season. And there's one more thread, one that's almost too human not to mention: the way people keep returning here. Not just tourists with cameras, but thinkers, dreamers, students, skeptics, engineers, artists. The pyramids pull people back because they're simple enough to understand and complex enough to never fully finish. They're both a solution and a question. That combination is addictive in a gentle way. It keeps you curious without keeping you on edge. Even the myths people build around them, the wild theories, the exaggerated mysteries, are, in their own sideways way, a compliment. Humans create myths around things that feel larger than their ordinary lives. Sometimes those myths get silly. Sometimes they get dramatic. But underneath, the instinct is the same: a desire to connect to something enduring, something that doesn't refresh every 10 seconds. You can connect without the drama. You can connect by holding the most grounded, relaxing facts, the ones that feel like sand under your feet and rope in your hands. Water used to level. Shadows used to test lines. Wet sand used to reduce friction. Levers used to nudge weight without lifting it into the air. Crew names tucked away in hidden chambers like a quiet signature. Casing stones fitted so tightly that the surface behaved like a single plane. The sky used as a compass. The desert used as a canvas. The whole project breathing with seasons and river cycles. It's all so physical, so practical, so human. And that's the final calming twist. The pyramids are not relaxing because they're impossible. They're relaxing because they are possible, slowly, collectively, deliberately. If you want a last little callback to seal the feeling, think about how people in the ancient world had their own odd daily hacks, the same way you do. You've got your fan hum. They had their sun management. Somewhere in that world, someone was probably experimenting with skin protection, mixing ingredients that make you raise an eyebrow. Yes, even things that sound ridiculous today, like crocodile dung sunscreen. Because humans have always been the same species. Practical, creative, sometimes gross, often surprisingly clever. The pyramids didn't rise from a world of perfect, polished people. They rose from a world of ordinary humans doing ordinary things. Eating, sweating, joking, trying to avoid sunburn, then showing up to do extraordinary work anyway. And with that, the pyramid no longer feels like a distant monument. It feels like a giant, quiet reminder that ordinary life and extraordinary achievement can sit in the same day. Your imagination can settle into one last image. The Great Pyramid under a calm sky. The air cool, the plateau quiet, the edges steady, the faces dark against the stars. Somewhere inside, a corridor holds still air. Somewhere above, cosmic particles pass through stone without asking permission. Somewhere in hidden chambers, red pigment still clings to rough surfaces, refusing to fade completely. Outside, wind threads along corners and softens into silence. The monument doesn't hurry. It doesn't demand anything from you. It simply stands, doing what it was designed to do. Hold shape, hold story, hold quiet. The pacing slows here without effort, the way your breath slows when the room is finally the right temperature. Thoughts stretch out, and there's no pressure to chase them. The pyramid stays in the distance of your mind like a stable horizon line. It feels safe to let the details soften, safe to let the sharp edges blur into silhouette, safe to stop measuring and simply rest. You can keep just the gentlest truths. Stone can be persuaded. Friction can be reduced. A line can be made straight with cord and patience. A direction can be found by watching the sky. A structure can be built one calm movement at a time. A mystery can remain a mystery without becoming a threat. Your attention drifts, not towards solving, but towards settling. The wind becomes a quiet, steady breath in the background. The stars become soft points instead of questions. The pyramid becomes a single, reassuring shape. Heavy, stable, ancient, unbothered. Everything in you that wants to rush can relax. Because nothing here is rushing. Not the stone, not the sky, not the desert, not even time. Really, time is still moving, but it's moving with the kind of patience that feels like permission. And if your mind tries to grab one more detail, it can grab a comforting one. Somewhere long ago, someone finished a shift on this plateau, looked up at a half-built mountain of stone, and went to sleep knowing tomorrow's work would continue the same steady rhythm. You don't need the whole pyramid tonight. You only need the rhythm.